On November 2nd, 2000, the first crew of astronauts arrived at the International Space Station. Almost 25 years have passed, and the ISS still remains one of the most outstanding projects created by humanity. During all this time, 280 astronauts from 23 countries have visited the station. This place has become a floating laboratory for space research where people from all over the world come together to explore our universe. The station remains a source of inspiration for writers and movie directors. This is not only one of the most important parts of the scientific field of humankind, but also an important attribute of pop culture. The station makes one circle around Earth every 90 minutes, and very soon, one of its next circles will become the last one. NASA is going to destroy the ISS. Space and science fiction fans may feel sad at this moment, but there are good reasons for such a difficult decision. The ISS, like any physical object, is not eternal, especially in the conditions of outer space. Yes, there's no oxygen, atmosphere, oxidation of materials, and air pressure, but the ISS is moving at an altitude of about 260 miles above the Earth's surface at a speed of 17,900 miles per hour, which is almost 20 times faster than the speed of sound. Also, the space around the planet is filled with debris consisting of broken satellites. And don't forget about stardust and tiny pieces of meteorites. What if something crashes into the station and blows it to pieces? Yeah, NASA is tracking the largest pieces of debris, but there are more and more of them every year. Under such conditions, the station can't serve us forever. The parts are wearing out, and the station fasteners are becoming weaker and require frequent repairs. The station was supposed to only last 15 years, but it will eventually last twice as long. In 2030, astronauts will leave the ISS, and then it will be destroyed. But how can this be done, given the size of this object? It weighs 430 tons and is the size of a football field. It is the largest object after the Moon that flies around our planet. People made 42 launches into space to construct this gigantic structure. Given its size and close location to Earth, destroying the station is a big risk. Just imagine it disintegrating into hundreds and thousands of fragments and falling to the surface of our planet. Yes, some of these chunks will burn up in the atmosphere. Others will fall into the water. But some large parts can fall on cities. It will be a devastating meteor shower. This option is too dangerous, but this is exactly what NASA is about to do. The disposal of the station will probably be a more complex operation than its creation. Of course, scientists have considered other options besides the destruction. For example, we could return all the astronauts to Earth and then send the station to a higher orbit so that it would fly there forever. However, such an operation would be too expensive. In addition, changing the orbit might not save the station from collapsing. We definitely don't need a huge piece of metal that could fall apart at any moment over our heads. That's why destroying the station is the only option. To destroy the station, scientists plan to send it to a lower Earth orbit, then carry it through the atmosphere, where some parts of the station will burn, and after that, submerge the station in a remote part of the ocean, where ships don't sail and fish don't swim. By the way, this place is called Point Nemo, and it's located in the South Pacific Ocean. This is the farthest point from land. For many years, people have been dumping space debris and failed satellites there. It's considered one of the most lifeless and loneliest places on Earth. NASA plans to drop the ISS there, but this requires very precise calculations and control. The operation can't be fulfilled without a special space tug, and this unique machine will be invented by Elon Musk's SpaceX company. Musk signed an $845 million contract with NASA. According to it, the station should be safely destroyed by 2031. And that's how this cinematic operation is going to happen. The device that will lower the ISS to Earth will be built according to the design of the SpaceX Dragon ship capsule. Scientists plan to calculate the details of the station's flight trajectory, all angles of incidence, and the speed of movement. No mistake can be made, as any miscalculation will lead to disaster. Our planet is a giant object with a powerful gravitational force that attracts other objects to itself. The ISS uses thrusters to resist this attraction and stay at the same height. So, first of all, the station will need to reduce its resistance. If necessary, it can use the engines to adjust the route. From an altitude of 260 miles, the station will descend into an orbit of 205 miles above Earth. After that, SpaceX will launch its space tug. All this will happen about a year before the scheduled date of destruction. During this time, the astronauts will fold up scientific equipment, say goodbye to the station, and return home. This sad moment will be recorded on camera and posted on the internet. After that, the whole planet will watch the dramatic finale of the ISS. The space tug will dock with the station and transport it to the lowest point of the orbit, approximately 90 miles above the surface. There, the station will experience huge air resistance. It will become increasingly difficult to control the fall. The tug must be equipped with powerful rocket engines to correct the flight. Scientists will control the shuttle, calculating the trajectory of the fall. Then, SpaceX's device will begin to push the station down. The giant space object will pass through the thickest and most dangerous layers of the atmosphere. It will burn down the station, which will be falling apart by that time. This will be a mesmerizing fire show. Some parts will burn up in the air, others will pass through the barrier. At high speed, incandescent parts will collide with the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Millions of people will be watching the last flight of the space legend on the screens of their gadgets and TVs. The water will be getting closer, and boom! Pieces of those stations will crash into the water with a deafening noise. Many smaller fragments will fall nearby. The entire station will cool down quickly and sink to the ocean floor. Mission completed. But the history of the station won't be over. Point Nemo is 2,700 miles away from the nearest land in any direction. But the best way to get to it is from Easter Island, Chile. What if rich people from all over the world flew to Chile to then travel to Point Nemo? Just imagine, covering thousands of miles just to get to the ISS crash site. People will descend in bathyscaphs to the ocean floor and take out the wreckage of the station. Someone might start selling them. Someone will keep them at home as part of a collection. Perhaps NASA will retrieve some modules of the station to put them in a museum. But what will happen once scientists finally get rid of the ISS? The space laboratory is used for research in outer space. After its destruction, research will continue, but on a grander scale. Humanity has to explore Mars, remember? For such an important mission, it's necessary to prepare astronauts in conditions close to those on the Red Planet. The Moon is the perfect place. NASA is conducting the Artemis mission. We'll explore the lunar surface, and we will go on a long journey to Mars from there. At the end of 2022, NASA launched a probe that flew beyond the Moon. The next flight will be launched with people on board. The third flight will be the first human outing on the Moon since 1972. Gradually, step by step, the agency plans to land several astronauts and space station modules on the surface of the Moon. They will build large research bases where they will prepare for the first ever human flight to Mars. By the way, would you agree to go on a dangerous journey to the Red Planet? Write your answers in the comments.
So, a mysterious discovery was made deep in the Red Sea, the so-called death pools. Woo, that's scary. In 2020, researchers embarked on a dive into the Red Sea. The mission spot was in the Gulf of Aqaba, between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Near the end of their expedition, as they ventured deeper into the darkening waters, they noticed some strange seaweed floating above the seafloor. They decided to use a remotely operated vehicle and investigate it. Suddenly, they discovered these strange, motionless lakes of water within the sea. These are called brine pools. They're basically pockets of salty water deep on the ocean floor. And when I say salty, I mean it. Sometimes they're up to 8 times saltier than the ocean water itself. Mysteriously, they don't mix well with the surroundings. They formed millions of years ago, sometime during the Miocene epoch. back when weird creatures roamed the earth, like me, and deeply buried mineral deposits dissolved into the water. The largest pool spans about 170,000 square feet. Meanwhile, 3 smaller ones are under 107 square feet each. At first, this discovery didn't seem that scary. But here's why they're so horrifying. Not only are they disgustingly salty, they also lack oxygen. Now hold on a sec, isn't that normal for something that's underwater? Well, it turns out the Earth's waters are full of oxygen, and at least half of this element on our planet comes from the oceans. Just like plants on land, marine plants such as phytoplankton, seaweed, and algae munch on sunlight and produce oxygen through photosynthesis. They release lots of it into the surroundings. Marine life then eats half of it, so only about a quarter of the oxygen that we breathe actually comes from the oceans. Just like us, sea creatures need this element to survive. Without it, they can't breathe and support their metabolism to live. That's why these pools are super dangerous for most of them. It's like a puddle of thick syrup for bugs. When they get in, the poor things immediately suffocate and pass away. Which is why the pools are surrounded by a graveyard of marine animals. But let's see how these things can exist in the first place. Have you ever tried making ice cubes from salty water? Spoiler, it's pretty hard. When you add salt, the water gets harder than usual to freeze, a phenomenon that has a funny name, freezing point depression. Oh, that's because salt interferes with the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. As it finally freezes, stuff like particles, dirt, or dissolved salts get pushed out to the sides. As a result, the salt's kind of squeezed out of the ice crystals and gets trapped near the edges in small bubbles or pockets. Something similar happens in the ocean when seawater starts freezing under super cold polar caps. The salt doesn't freeze with the water. Instead, it gets pushed out, forming a super salty cold liquid, the brine. And then it sinks down to the ocean floor. On a large scale, all this process also helps currents to form. Despite being so dangerous, the pools are still full of microbial life, because microbes couldn't care less, they'll survive anywhere. There are literally thick mats of them in the brines. There are also some salt-loving creatures, like shrimps and eels, hovering around the pool's edges. They're being super creepy, waiting to catch unsuspecting prey that ventures too close to the toxic death pool. Ew. Well, it sounds icky, I know. But this discovery gives us some fascinating insights into how life might have originated on Earth. We already know from the evolution theory that we came from the ocean, but now scientists think that life might have begun in the deep sea in some super dark, oxygen-free places. These brine pools are like time capsules. They're one of the closest things we've found to the early Earth. They can tell us the planet's history of earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and more. For example, they have some traces of rainfall that happened over 1,000 years ago. And they can also help us search for life on other water-rich planets. For example, Mars most likely used to have huge oceans on it. Now, NASA scientists want to send a special instrument called HABIT for a special red planet mission to study things similar to our brine pools. This will tell us more about how life appears and survives in the universe. There is lots of unexplored fascinating stuff like this in the Red Sea. That's why scientists conducted the so-called Decade Expedition and spent around 5 months exploring the place. This expedition was launched by the National Center for Wildlife. They made so many remarkable discoveries that now we've got 77 new research papers. For example, they found over 10 blue holes, incredible underwater sinkholes that host unique ecosystems. They also learned that dolphins can use those blue holes to protect their young from predators. Scientists also found traces of great white sharks, a creepy community of deep-sea lanternfish living in low oxygen conditions, and even a new coral species. It's the most resilient deep-sea corals that also vibe just fine without oxygen, like microbes we mentioned. Speaking of which, research also showed us some new ancient thermal vents and large blobs of microbial formations near Farasand Island. Now, can you believe that with all that, we only explored 5% of the ocean? It's divided into several layers based on depth. Each layer becomes darker and more isolated from sunlight as we go deeper. The places that no sunlight can reach are terrifying. Now, the fun, cute layer with dolphins and turtles is called the epipelagic or sunlight zone. It's so tiny, but even this layer is about 650 feet deep. Then we have the mesopelagic, or twilight zone. It's the layer of mysterious octopus, shark, and other loners, which extend to about 3,000 feet down. And then the horrors begin after this one. We encounter the bathopelagic, or midnight zone. It extends to 13,000 feet below the surface, about a half of Everest above you. Here we have the famous poor blobfish, squids, and anglerfish. Below it is the abyssal zone. It extends to about 20,000 feet deep. Since there's not much sunlight or oxygen, as we mentioned, most creatures here are quite small, like tube worms and shrimp. The darkness continues until we arrive at the scariest place of the planet, the place full of trenches formed by tectonic plate movements, the Hadal Zone. It's named after Hades, the deity of the underworld in Greek mythology. Just like Hades' realm is dark, remote, and guarded, the Hadal Zone is the deepest and most depressing part of the ocean. It starts at depths of around 20,000 feet and can go down to 36,000 feet and more. The famous Mariana Trench also belongs to this zone. Only 3 people in history have ever explored these depths in person, making it one of the least explored and most mysterious places on our planet. However, despite crazy high pressure, near freezing temperatures, and complete darkness, there are still things who manage to survive here. Guys like amphipods, which are critters who feed on dead material sinking from above, and the Hadal snailfish, which lives as deep as 27,000 feet. So scientists used to assume that if there's no sunlight, there wouldn't be that much oxygen around. But one day, a research team decided to measure the levels of oxygen in one of those deep zones. Surprisingly, the levels were super high. They checked the equipment thinking that it was malfunctioning, but nope, all the sensors showed the same thing. Turns out the oxygen was somehow generated by rocks. These small potato-sized rocks on the seafloor are called polymetallic nodules. They're rich in metals like copper, nickel, and cobalt, and they're basically like small batteries. When you put a battery in salt water, it can produce bubbles of gas, a process called electrolysis. In the same way, these rocks create tiny electric currents, which are powerful enough to produce the same gases, splitting water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. It's the first time we saw oxygen being produced by some non-living minerals. This is what scientists now call dark oxygen. It turned out that about half of large marine species, or megafauna, were living just on dark oxygen alone. All these discoveries are reshaping our understanding of where and how life could evolve. It means that we might be able to find life on other planets or satellites with low oxygen conditions, like Enceladus and Europa, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and they have large bodies of frozen water on them. Wow.
What a peaceful morning. Can't wait to start the trip. Wait a minute. What's wrong with the water level? No! The wave is already here! I gotta move as fast as I can! Hey, lady! It's too dangerous!
Ow!
Oh, the water is so cold! Come on, let's go upstairs.
Okay.
We need to climb as high as we can. Otherwise, we're gonna be washed away. Don't panic. We'll get out of here. Oh, gosh. Look! There's a departing train! We should try to jump on it. Hey! Come on, buddy! Let us in! Wow! Oh, watch out! Come on, I got you. Look, here's another train. Run! Hey! Wait for us! I don't like it. There's too much water. We should jump on the railways and try to escape. It's falling on our heads! That was epic. We gotta climb. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Come on, I got you.
Oh no, another one.
Ah! Watch your head!
Ow!
Give me your hand! Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll pull you out. There you go.
Yeah, wow.
No worries. The water is coming. Ugh. Everything's falling apart! Let's get out of here!
Okay.
Let's go! Ugh. Let's run to the front car. I have an idea. Luckily, I can drive trains. Hear the sound of water? Turn around! The water is coming!
Wow. Let's get out of here.
Whoa! The wave is huge! Hold on! Whoa! Thank goodness we're inside the train.
Today's our lucky day.
Oops! This train didn't go far, did it? Wow! Oh, watch out!
Ah!
Ugh.
Ow! Ow! Are you okay? Not injured?
No worries.
Let's go, bro. Move it!
Come on! Whoa! I don't like it. Ugh. I gotta move quickly. It seems like the worst is over. Let's go this way. Ah! What the heck? What is that? Whoa! Ugh. Ugh. Oh no! I gotta get out of here! Yeah! Don't mess with me! Bye! Whoa! Ah, no! Please don't hurt me! Ugh. Well, looks like it's my only way out. Wow! Whew. Okay, it's not that bad, is it? Ugh. Whoa! Ugh. That was tough. I gotta move on. Oh no! How did you get here?
Phew. Wow. We kind of ran away.
Don't panic. We'll get out of here.
Oh no. Hurry up!
Run! Oh, shh. I should be quiet. Oh, watch out! Whoa! Come on. Whoa! Ugh.
Hurry up!
Let's go! Ugh. Ugh. Get off me, you monster! I have an idea. Whoa! Everything's falling apart! Let's get out of here!
Phew. Thank goodness we're alive.
Well, at least we're safe.
Today's our lucky day.
Wow! Don't be afraid. I have an idea.
It's running over here, and it doesn't look friendly. Hurry up! Ah!
Ugh. Everything's falling apart. Come on. Oh, the water is so cold. Come on! Okay now, what's next? I have an idea! Luckily I can drive trains. Oops! This train didn't go far, did it? That was epic.
You know how they say it's better to just hand over your wallet if you run into a mugger? Instead of surrendering their wallets, sea cucumbers choose to spit out some of their insides to fend off predators like crabs and fish. It's a natural defense mechanism for them, and they quickly grow those organs back in just a few days, thanks to special cells inside their bodies. It's not the only weird thing sea cucumbers do. They can actually breathe through their rear end. They have this thing called a respiratory tree that connects to their backside and sits right next to their intestines. So when they suck in water from their behind, it goes into that respiratory tree, letting them absorb oxygen directly into their fluids. Plus, sea cucumbers are the janitors of the ocean. They munch on whatever gets stuck in the sand on the ocean floor. Once they've eaten, they manage to clean out the sand, leaving it nice and tidy after they do their business. As for the clean sand, The stunning white sand beaches in Hawaii are actually a product of parrotfish number 2. These fish munch on algae from rocks and dead corals, and while they're chomping away, they also grind up the leftover bits of coral in their bellies. When they're done, they move their bowels, and voila! It all comes out as beautiful sand. Not only do they play a vital role in keeping the coral reef ecosystem healthy, but they can churn out hundreds of pounds of this white sand every year. Marine animals are seriously impressive when it comes to holding their breath. Just look at sperm whales and elephant seals. They can stay underwater for a mind-blowing 2 hours. Then there's the Cuvier's beaked whale, which holds the crazy record at almost 4 hours underwater. When you compare that to the human record of 24 minutes and 37 seconds held by pro diver Budimir Shobut, it seems pretty insignificant. But what's the marine animal's secret that helps them excel humans this much? Unlike us, these sea creatures have a ton of hemoglobin and myoglobin in their blood and muscles, allowing them to store way more oxygen. When their oxygen runs low, myoglobin steps up and releases even more. Plus, they can tolerate higher levels of CO2, so they don't feel the need to breathe as quickly. There's even a study that found their myoglobin molecules have a unique charge that keeps them from sticking together, which boosts oxygen storage. And on top of all that, they can slow down their heart rate and restrict blood flow to hang out underwater even longer. Rumor has it that about 540 million years ago, a meteor loaded with frozen octopus eggs smashed into Earth. Sounds like a delirium, but some scientists are entertaining a very questionable idea that octopuses and their cephalopod buddies, like squids and cuttlefish, might actually have some extraterrestrial origins. The thing is, cephalopods have extraordinary DNA that doesn't look like any other DNA on our planet. They've got around 33,000 protein-coding genes in their genome, which is way more than what we humans have. A recent study suggests that their evolutionary story shows some odd traits that might hint at a connection to space, like they could be from some super far-off past, or even the future. The researchers went as far as to claim that modern octopuses could be the descendants of these frozen creatures that hitched a ride on comets and splashed down in our oceans. And why octopuses? Well, they really stand out in the animal kingdom. They can use different tools to build their own houses, and they can even solve everyday problems independently of their brain, as 2/3 of an octopus's neurons are in its arms. These traits seem to have just appeared out of nowhere during evolution. They even tossed around another quirky theory. What if an extraterrestrial virus crashed into early squid populations and gave them a crazy boost in evolution, turning them into the octopuses we know today? Anyways, these are just fun speculations without any hard proof. Now, this funky object is an animal, not a rock. It's called sand dollar. Just look at the shape of its shell. Once sand dollars are exposed to the sun, their shells lose their soft, spiny covering and become bleached white. Back in the day, beachcombers thought these shells looked a lot like big silver coins, kind of like the old Spanish dollar that was about the same size. But if you prefer, you can call them sand cakes instead. These quirky creatures have tiny spines on their surface, and they glide along the ocean floor. They use small tube feet that line the grooves on their underside to grab bits of food like plankton and algae, which they then send to their mouths. Inside, they have 5 triangular teeth that help them munch on their meals. In some Georgia folklore, sand dollars are said to represent coins lost by mermaids. Sand dollars have a unique talent for cloning themselves. They can do this for a bunch of reasons, like when a predator comes around. Some species of sand dollar larvae can actually split in half as a defense mechanism. It takes about 24 hours for them to clone themselves, and the new larvae end up being about 2/3 smaller than the original, which helps them hide from danger. Wait, is that a giant sea hot dog racing through the ocean? Sorta. Some scientists have joked that sperm whales seriously resemble enormous hot dogs. These massive creatures can take quick naps, standing up for about 10 to 15 minutes. They only sleep about 7% of the time, mostly between 6 p.m. and midnight. Sperm whales also have a cool ability to retract and extend their eyes, thanks to a thick retractor muscle around them, but they can't actually roll their eyes in their sockets. Plus, they have the most asymmetrical skull of any mammal out there. Oh, and let's not forget, they have the largest brain of any living creature, weighing in at over 9 pounds. Unlike us humans, if dolphins went into full-on snooze, they'd stop breathing and could drown. So they figured out a genius solution. They let only one side of their brain sleep at a time. This means one half stays awake to keep them breathing and watching out for any potential threats. When they snooze, they only close one eye. If their right brain is resting, their left eye is shut, and vice versa. This unique sleep style is called unihemispheric sleep, and it lets them recharge without ever fully losing awareness. On top of that, dolphins might be using corals and sponges like their own little pharmacies. Scientists have seen them rubbing their bodies against specific types of coral and sponges, suggesting they might be treating skin issues. They've even spotted dolphins lining up to take turns at these spots, using corals like Gorgonian coral Rumpella aggregata, leather coral, and some sponges. What's really fascinating is that researchers have analyzed these corals and found they contain compounds that could help with dolphin skin conditions, which can sometimes lead to infections and lesions. Now, the big question is figuring out exactly how each type of coral helps dolphins, and if it really boosts their health overall. Sea urchins aren't exactly the Usain Bolts of the ocean. They move slowly by crawling with their tube feet and occasionally give themselves a little push with their spines. These little guys have just 5 teeth, which they use like a beak to scrape algae off rocks, which I'm pretty sure is the ocean's version of an all-you-can-eat buffet. But since all that scraping wears their teeth down, they're in a never-ending dental replacement program. Scallops are the underwater equivalent of the world's most confused security cameras, sporting up to 200 tiny eyes on their shells. These eyes are high-tech. They can even adjust their pupils to light. Instead of working like ours, scallop eyes have a unique setup. Light goes through a pupil, lens, 2 retinas, and then hits a mirror made of guanine crystals that reflects it back. Scientists were puzzled about how they see since their main retina often gets blurry light. But it turns out, scallops can change their pupil size by about 50%. Just don't expect them to do it in a hurry, as it takes a few minutes.
Now here's something really neat about orcas. They're expert hunters, and they do it in groups called pods. A pod can consist of up to 40 orcas, forming a very effective hunting team. Interestingly, there are distinct types of pods: resident and transient. Resident pods are more into fish, while transient pods have a taste for marine mammals. But no matter what type of pod they belong to, all orcas have one thing in common: they are master collaborators. They work together using smart hunting techniques that are often compared to the teamwork of wolf packs. Almost 95% of jellyfish's body is made of water. For comparison, the human body is 60% water. It's probably not a surprise since jellyfish don't have a heart, blood, eyes, or brain. The other 5% of their body weight is proteins, muscles, and nerve cells. Jellyfish have been around for more than 500 million years. This makes them older than dinosaurs. These creatures haven't changed much, and today's jellyfish are pretty much like their ancestors. Electric eels have small eyes that are not so effective in environments with no light, so they mostly rely on their electric organs. Those consist of 6,000 cells. Eels use them to stow power, similar to batteries. These creatures use electricity like bats use their radars or dolphins their sonar. An eel can also produce enough electricity to power a panel of light bulbs. There's a small tropical archer fish that can learn to recognize human faces. This fish has an interesting ability to spit small jets of water from its mouth. Researchers showed the fish the image of 2 different faces placed side by side. One was unknown and the other was familiar. The fish was supposed to spit water at the familiar one. The creature took the right guess more than 80% of the time. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. Iguanas use their long claws to hold onto the bottom when they need to graze. Green turtles can cross over 1,400 miles when migrating. They try to find the perfect spot to lay their eggs. Penguins sort of fly when they're underwater, reaching a speed of 25 miles per hour. More than 5 million years ago, I've heard, I wasn't around then, deep-sea worms and humans had a common ancestor. So we still share 70% of our genes with these creatures, and with sea stars, squid, and octopuses. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an Animal's Most Amazing Ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the 4-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now, visually, it has 4 limbs, but in practice, it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins, and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Every year in the winter, great white sharks that live along the California coastline disappear. It feels as if they take a vacation for 30 to 40 days. The animals go to a point halfway between Hawaii and Mexico. They might do it to get some food, relax, or hang out with their buddies from other areas. The spot is now called the Whale Shark Cafe. Some types of sharks, like makos, whale sharks, or white sharks, breathe in a very specific way. It requires them to swim all the time. They also need to move quickly and with their mouth open. This way, the oxygen can enter and reach their gills. Sea sponges are some of the most primitive animals. They're immobile, don't have a mouth, eyes, bones, brain, heart, lungs, or any other organ whatsoever. And still, they're alive. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey.
We are up for a crazy Atlantic hurricane season. It may be even worse than that of 2005, the year that brought us Hurricane Katrina. That one took 1,392 lives and cost the country over $100 billion. Experts predict there will be between 17 to 25 total named storms. Some of these storms are about to become hurricanes, with winds reaching over 100 miles per hour or higher. We're already seeing storms sweep across the country, bringing dangers like tornadoes, flooding, and hail. You gotta thank the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, for this. This complicated term has to do with El Niño and La Niña, the two giant forces that basically shape our world. Normally, winds in the Pacific Ocean blow west along the equator, moving warm water from South America towards Asia. This warm water is replaced by cold water rising from the depths of the Pacific. But during El Niño and La Niña, this usual pattern is messed up. El Niño is the warm phase of the ENSO cycle. During El Niño, the equatorial winds weaken, causing warm water to shift back towards the west coast of the Americas. This means less cold water rises to the surface. The weather in northern parts of the US and Canada become drier and warmer because of it. But there are wetter conditions in southern states. In the Atlantic, El Niño weakens hurricane seasons, and it ramps up hurricane activity in the central and eastern Pacific. In Africa, it brings more rain to East Africa but less to southern Africa, West Africa, and parts of the Sahara. La Niña is the cold phase of the ENSO cycle. During this phase, the westward winds along the equator in the Pacific are stronger than usual, and they push more warm water towards Asia. And because of it, colder, nutrient-rich water rises to the surface along the Americas' west coast. These colder Pacific waters push the jet stream northward, giving us drier weather in the southern US, but wetter and colder conditions in the Pacific Northwest and Canada. La Niña also brings warmer winters to the southern US and cooler than normal temperatures to the north. La Niña usually calms hurricane activity in the Pacific, but intensifies it in the Atlantic. In 2023, El Niño was in charge, and it took most storms up before they got to the US. But this year, we've switched to La Niña, and this lady brings us colder water in the Pacific and a pattern that lets storms move a little farther west and reach the Caribbean. And when they get there, they can easily move into the Gulf and affect Florida and other states. The upcoming intense Atlantic hurricane season also has to do with a strong monsoon season in West Africa. It creates moisture and waves off Africa's coast and can travel along the Atlantic and spur hurricanes. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from the 1st of June to the 30th of November, and most activity happens between mid-August and mid-October. Since the 1950s, tropical cyclones have been given names to make it easier for meteorologists to inform the public about them. You're more likely to remember that Leslie is coming than Hurricane X34D is on the way, right? So there are 20 names on the alphabetical list this year, from Alberto to Beryl to Valerie and William. Let's hope it won't get as terrible as the Galveston hurricane. The most fatal natural disaster in U.S. history hit Texas in the year 1900. A Category 4 hurricane smashed into Galveston, demolishing over 3,600 buildings with winds over 135 miles per hour. It took the lives of between 6,000 and 12,000 people. One of the reasons it became so fatal was poor communication policy. Days before the disaster, it was clear to a professional weather forecaster that the storm was moving west. But the Weather Bureau in Washington predicted it would go over Florida and up to New England, which was way off. The Bureau was just 10 years old then, so hurricane science in the US wasn't very advanced. Cuban scientists were excellent at tracking storms because their region is so prone to them. So they knew it was heading towards the Gulf of Mexico. Unfortunately, the director of the Weather Bureau was so jealous that the Cuban forecasters were better than the American ones that he cut off the flow of information from Cuba and made it difficult for local forecasters to issue warnings without going through Washington. In the days before the storm hit, the chief observer in Galveston began to suspect that Washington's forecast was wrong and tried to warn the city, but it was too late. The hurricane left Galveston in ruins. After this hurricane, the Weather Bureau started improving communication, both internationally and within the U.S. The officials in charge are doing everything possible to improve forecasts, support the people, and help the affected areas recover more easily after the hurricanes hit. They're going to try new forecast models to predict tropical cyclones getting stronger, help emergency and water managers prepare for potential flooding, and protect people and infrastructure. Coastal weather buoys in the tropical Western Atlantic and Caribbean have been upgraded, and new drifters and sail drones, underwater gliders, and a lightweight drop sonde will provide real-time data. There are also some things you can do to ensure your safety before, during, and after a hurricane. If you live in a hurricane-prone area, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, you must always be prepared before the high storm season. Make up a family disaster plan that will outline your actions during an emergency. Map out several evacuation routes in case your primary one is blocked, and decide on a meeting place if you get separated. You can arrange drills to teach family members how to shut off water, gas, and electricity, and even make sure the youngest knows how to call emergency services. Pack a disaster kit that will be ready to go at a moment's notice. It should include essentials like food, water, a first aid kit, and flashlights to last at least 72 hours on your own. You can buy a generator to make sure you have electricity in case of a power outage until the power returns. Keep it in a secure place, away from rain and rising water, with proper ventilation. You're also going to need self-powered radios and flashlights. If you can, add a safe room to your house that's strengthened to withstand high winds with reinforced concrete ceiling, floor, and walls. Make sure you have enough canned and non-perishable food and bottled water for at least 3 days. When the storm is about to hit, head north to get away from it, where it will be much weaker by the time it gets there. It's much safer to keep your family and pets together away from the storm than trying to ride it out at home. Try to go in one car if possible. Always follow local evacuation orders, especially if you're in a mobile home. Fill up your gas tank and give yourself plenty of time to get out. Never leave your pets behind. Debris, floodwaters, or flying objects can be dangerous for them. If you're staying put during a storm, you need a safe spot for you, your family, and your pets. This place shouldn't have any windows or skylights. If you're hiding at home, close all interior doors and secure the exterior ones. Quickly find an interior room with strong walls and no windows, like a bathroom or closet. If your home isn't safe, look for a community shelter. Get to your shelter at least 2 hours before the storm hits so it doesn't catch you outside. Bring a battery-powered radio with extra batteries for updates every 15 to 30 minutes. Never leave your shelter even if it seems calm, as conditions can get worse quickly, especially if you're in the eye of the storm. For extra protection, lie on the floor under something sturdy like a table. Don't use electric appliances, phones, or showers during the storm. Don't leave your shelter until you get the official all clear from the authorities. Be careful. There will be many hazards outside.
Rekat structure is a giant formation in the Sahara that looks exactly like a giant bullseye. It's so wide that you can see it from space. Even the CIA got interested in it. In 1965, they planned a flyover looking for geomagnetic anomalies. The findings are still classified. Perhaps the theories are true, and this place is truly the lost city of Atlantis. Now, Atlantis supposedly sank beneath the waves, but recent discoveries are pointing us in a different direction. This is an ancient story that goes far back in time, and Plato was the first to mention it. The place had loads of greenery and a curious structure. 3 concentric circles of land surrounding 2 circles of water. 2 key quotes from Plato's writing suggest that Atlantis might not have been a typical island in the middle of the ocean. Plus, Atlantis had a major influence from Africa and Europe, challenging the idea of it being in the Atlantic. It turns out that the Eye of the Sahara and Atlantis look alike. When astronauts saw the Eye of Sahara from above, they initially suspected a meteorite impact crater, but the rings of the structure matched the layout described of Atlantis. More importantly, The Sahara wasn't always a desert. It turned from a tropical region into a desert around 11,000 years ago. Researchers found evidence of a massive river called the Tamaracet that could have sustained a community. This river flowed toward the Rikat structure, aligning with Plato's description. The Trans-Saharan Seaway ran through the Sahara 50 to 100 million years ago. The sea allegedly destroyed Atlantis around 11,500 years ago, likely due to a rapid rise in sea level caused by the end of the Ice Age. NASA's worldview imagery shows patterns consistent with this theory. Those concentric rings might be a key to unlocking the secrets of our planet's evolution over millions of years. They're shaped by erosion on resilient rock layers, creating a spooky pattern of ridges and troughs. The central peak stands proud at 1,300 feet. The central part has undergone a significant erosion makeover, revealing a circular structure with a raised peak. Unlike impact craters, the Eye of the Sahara flaunts a striking balance and symmetry. Some say it results from rock uplift, sculpted by wind and water. Others think it's an ancient anticline, eroded to reveal its concentric glory. Then there's a salt diapir theory, suggesting that salt's buoyancy sculpted this beauty. Dating techniques have proved that it formed 541 to 252 million years ago, give or take a million or two. Ancient tools are scattered around the outer rings of the structure near riverbeds. Some older stone tools have also been spotted in the same areas. And still, even though some spear points from the Neolithic period have been found, there aren't many signs that people were living there back then. The area seems to have been used for short-term activities like hunting and making tools. There are other unearthly mysteries that haunt our world. One such enigma is in Norway. The ominous Hessdalen light phenomenon, also known as the Valley of Lights, leaves scientists confused. This valley is 10 miles wide. It's quite isolated, but a peculiar blue box sits high on the hillside, equipped with cameras scanning the valley. The unsettling saga began in the 1980s, when the night sky over Hessdalen erupted with burning fireballs, a recurring spectacle that sent shivers down the spines of those who witnessed it. This wasn't a fleeting occurrence, rather it became a regular thing. Terrified locals reported encounters with these unexplained luminous phenomena, some of which happened near their homes. Unease spread like wildfire. At its peak, there were about 20 sightings every week. The phenomenon made its way into newspapers, magazines, and media worldwide. Soon, people flocked to the valley, hoping to see the lights themselves. In 1984, experts joined the fray, armed with sophisticated instruments like magnetometers, radiometers, and other ometers. What they encountered was mind-bending, lights that defied explanation. Some moved at a leisurely pace, while others raced through the sky at an astonishing 19,000 miles per hour. People tried to explain these lights: airplanes, distant reflections, ball lightning, satellites, planets, meteors. But the speed and how these lights danced ruled out all those theories. We're slowly approaching another mysterious place. This is the greatest subglacial lake among Antarctica's 675 known lakes. It can easily hide unknown life forms. This lake is beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. Dive about 2.5 miles under the ice, and there you'll see Lake Vostok, located at 1,600 feet below sea level. This lake is 155 miles long and 31 miles wide at its broadest point. With an average depth of 1,400 feet, it's also the world's sixth largest by volume. It's like an underwater city with lofty pillars and deep basins. The secret lake was discovered in 1993, yet it had been waiting to be found down there for over 2,000 years, collecting ancient secrets. In 2012, scientists drilled through the ice, creating the longest ice core ever. They pierced the ice all the way to the lake's surface. The year 2013 brought an unexpected twist when the tranquil waters erupted during the extraction of an ice core, mixing with drilling fluids. Then they got a pristine water sample in 2015. Some believe there might be previously unknown life forms down there, since it's a fossil water reserve that's been untouched for millions of years. That could be a lot like those speculated ice-covered oceans on moons like Europa and Enceladus. It all started with a theory in the 19th century, suggesting fresh water lurking under Antarctic ice sheets. Then, in 1955, seismic soundings hinted at a subglacial lake, and by the 90s, satellite data confirmed Lake Vostok's existence. Now, Lake Vostok isn't alone. In 2005, they found an island in the middle of the lake. Then, two smaller lakes joined the party. They suspect that a secret network of subglacial rivers might link these lakes. Now, very far away from Antarctica, in Venezuela, Catatumbo lightning presents a sinister light show at the junction of the Catatumbo River and Lake Maracaibo. This unsettling lightning phenomenon happens at about 140 to 160 nights a year, going on for 10 hours a day, and can flash up to 280 times in a single hour. The frequency of this lightning show changes with the seasons and from year to year. There was a break between January to March in 2010, causing a bit of worry that it might vanish forever. As the sun sets, winds from the east start picking up speed. The strong wind is called a nocturnal low-level jet, like what you see in the Great Plains of North America. These winds bring moisture, mostly from the Caribbean and the lake itself. This humid air hits high mountain ridges, causing thunderstorms to form over the mountains. Thanks to the ongoing wind situation, more thunderstorms appear as the night goes on. This pattern repeats itself, and is why this area has the highest annual lightning rate globally. The next place scientists cannot explain is in China. That is the Longyu Caves. They have lofty slanted roofs and sturdy pillars. The spot remained hidden for centuries. These human-made caverns, built around 2,000 years ago, decided to reveal themselves only in the 90s. Local farmers drained some ponds and unveiled 5 massive caverns. Further digging exposed an additional 19 smaller caves. They range from 60 to 110 feet in width and 26 to 50 feet in height. Archaeologists found historical relics from the reign of Emperor Zhuan of Han, dating back to over 2,000 years ago. Now, how did these caves survive for more than 2 millennia without falling apart? No ancient records explain the way they were crafted either. The walls show chisel marks, hinting at some layer-by-layer chiseling action, but the exact construction process is still a head-scratcher.
There's a creature somewhere deep in the ocean looking for prey that would make Dracula himself proud. It's been around since before even the dinosaurs walked the earth. It has no bones or jaw, but it doesn't stop this underwater vampire from hunting. The name of this eel-like parasite is the Pacific lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating lamprey flesh. He got sick every time he'd have the original gooey fish. But the lack of bones and the fact that this lamprey tastes like slow-cooked beefsteak made the royal fall in love with the fish once and for all. The product of this love was a chill in his aged body, some heavy sweating, and some other scary symptoms, which eventually took his life and interrupted his 35-year reign. The lamprey is way better at surviving, as it lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. There are around 40 living species of lampreys still thriving across the world. The Pacific lamprey is just one of them. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones, and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on the top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a sucker mouth surrounded by teeth. It's perfect for latching onto prey and sipping up body fluids like underwater vampires. Once they pick a victim, they suction it, making a seal that's almost impossible to break. Scientists believe the Pacific lampreys don't munch on flesh. Female lampreys lay up to 200,000 eggs in nests that stay in fresh water for 3 to 4 weeks. Once the larvae hatch, they burrow into sediment and stay under the sand for up to a decade. When they hit their teenage years, these miniature Draculas reemerge and migrate from freshwater all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This journey isn't the easiest, and it takes some changes to its appearance and physiology to adapt to a huge change in salinity. After several years, they go back to freshwater to reproduce. Pacific lampreys can use chemical clues released by their larval migrating pals to find their way. They can travel hundreds of miles inland to find the perfect spot for spawning and rearing. It's not always the same place they spawned in. Many species of birds, mammals, and other fish can appreciate the fatty flesh of lamprey. This makes them some of the most valuable players in freshwater and marine ecosystems. Another lamprey type, the sea lamprey, is native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's not that dangerous when it's at home, but once it gets to the Great Lakes, it becomes a real threat to the 4 local native species of lamprey. The sea lamprey is up to 4 times bigger than the lake species. It has unlimited food and spawning grounds, and no natural predators here, so it becomes cocky. It secretes an enzyme that doesn't let the blood clot. Once it attaches to some unsuspecting fish, it spends the next several months feeding off of it. And even if the fish shakes the lamprey off, it doesn't have long to live because the mark the predator leaves behind. Sea lampreys aren't interested in humans, but can accidentally latch onto a swimmer. It won't be fatal, but it's not the most pleasant sensation, and you need to get the spot of the impact disinfected. The Australian box jellyfish looks harmless, but it's considered the most venomous marine animal. Unlike other kinds of jellyfish that float with the current rather than swim, this creature can reach an impressive speed and choose its own direction. It has tentacles covered with tiny darts loaded with poison. People and animals that get unlucky enough to meet with those tentacles face some scary and sometimes even fatal consequences in a matter of minutes. Before you decide to never revisit the ocean, you should know that only a few out of around 50 existing species of box jellyfish have venom that is lethal to humans. There are some not-so-dangerous species living in warm coastal waters worldwide. And the most dangerous ones are in the Indo-Pacific region and northern Australia. A blue-ringed octopus spots a signature psychedelic color and the ability to take away your life. This cute-looking sea monster likes to spend its time in the soft, sandy bottom or shallow tide pools and coral reefs. It normally hides in underwater crevices, among shells or debris. If you disturb it, the octopus will activate its tiny color-changing organs and demonstrate its blue rings as a warning signal. The next step will be releasing a venom 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide. This venom is more toxic than that of land mammals. The octopus normally uses it to hunt crabs, shrimp, and small fish by pecking them with its beak and paralyzing them. There is no known antidote for the venom, so if you ever see this sea creature, the best you can do is to stay away from it. It bites without any pain, so you might notice when it's too late. The good news is that it's not aggressive and won't go after you unless it's cornered. The reef stonefish are masters of disguise in the underwater world that camouflage themselves on rocks, coral reefs, or just blend into the seabed. They thrive throughout tropical marine waters of the Indo-Pacific. Their invisibility superpower makes them especially dangerous to their prospective victims they ambush and swallow whole. If someone happens to disturb them, their 13 defensive dorsal spines stand on end and deliver a powerful venom punch. They say stonefish stings are extra painful and lead to scary consequences within minutes. They're called the most venomous fish in the world. If you don't do anything about it, the impact can be lethal. If you ever go diving in the Pacific Ocean, be careful not to pick up a cone snail from the seafloor. It has a beautiful shell made of brown, black, or white patterns. Like most other snails, it's slow, but it has a complicated system of seeking out prey. It likes to snack on fish, marine worms, or even other snails. Once a cone snail senses food is near, it activates a sharp proboscis, or a needle-like protrusion from its mouth. The attack is swift and super potent. The victim doesn't even have time to realize what happened to them. Once it's completely incapable of moving, the cone snail swallows it whole. Humans aren't on its menu, but it can still release the venom if someone steps on it or disturbs it. The proboscis can even penetrate gloves. Luckily, only several out of over 700 species of cone snails can take a human's life. But since there's no antivenom, you better not risk it. All 52 known species of sea snakes living mostly in the warm tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are venomous. The beaked sea snake even has the title of one of the world's most venomous serpents, but it's one of the few kinds that can pose a real threat to humans. Sea snakes prefer a peaceful coexistence and would rather slither away than engage in any confrontations. If you ever see them in the water, staying calm and moving slowly will save your life. Sea snake bites, although almost painless at the moment, can have varying degrees of impact. Some may only cause mild symptoms, while others can lead to severe outcomes. Most bite reports come from accidental encounters, like someone freeing them from nets or unsuspecting beachgoers stepping on them. Blue dragons rarely grow larger than the size of a grape. They like to swim belly up, so their brightest blues blend in with the ocean waters. And the silver front faces down and camouflages with the darker seabed. Blue dragons feed on another dangerous sea creature and store up their stinging cells. Their venom lives on even after the fish itself is no longer alive. That's why you should be extra careful and never pick up or step on them on the beach.
When we look at our planet from space, one color dominates. That's why Earth is called the blue planet. About 3/4 of our world is covered with water. But there's a catch. 96.5% of this water is trapped in the oceans. And if you remember the first time your parents took you to the seaside, drinking that water is a big no-no. So, why is ocean water salty and undrinkable? There are two main reasons. The first is runoff water from the land. Rainwater is slightly acidic. Its pH factor is somewhere between 5 and 5.5. For comparison, pure water has a pH factor of 7, and the acid we find in batteries is a bit more than 0. Such rain erodes rocks when it falls on the ground. This releases ions, such as sodium and chloride. They end up in rivers and streams that eventually empty into the ocean. Living organisms remove some of the good ions, but the rest remains. Over time, this increases their concentration in the water. Oceans have their own salt powerhouse. Vents in the sea floor let out a hydrothermal fluid. Sounds complicated, but it's easy to understand. Water seeps down the gaps on the ocean floor. Then, the magma from the Earth's core heats up the water. There is a chemical reaction that frees seawater from oxygen. It picks up metals, such as iron and zinc. The vents on the sea floor release this metallic water back into the ocean. During an underwater volcanic eruption, the process speeds up. Salt and other minerals are directly released into Earth's oceans. Over time, salt accumulates on the seafloor and forms domes. These deposits occur under dry land as well. Some places on the globe have a large number of salt domes. The Gulf of Mexico is just one example. Beneath the waves, they affect the salinity of water. Other factors that determine how salty a body of water is include evaporation, air temperature, and precipitation. The general rule is that salinity is low near the equator and at the poles. All the oceans and seas in between are likely to have high salinity. Scientists estimate that dissolved salts make up 3.5% of the weight of the world's seawater. The waters that empty into the ocean, such as lakes and rivers, are fresh water. So, why is the seawater salty? To answer this question, we must travel into our planet's past. Researchers believe that primeval seas weren't as salty as they are today. But over time, rainfall washed away the rocks on land, transporting vast amounts of salt into the oceans. The process has been going on for more than 3.8 billion years. Today, some 4 billion tons of dissolved salts end up in Earth's oceans every year. The input and output of salt are fairly balanced. This means that seawater's salinity is stable. So, why can't we drink seawater? We already take salt into our bodies with food and drinks. It is called dietary salt. The World Health Organization recommends that humans consume no more than a teaspoon per person, per day. You shouldn't go over that amount if you want to keep your heart healthy. Centuries ago, salted beef and pork were the standard diet of seafarers. Meat was preserved using salt. At sea, fresh fruit and vegetables would go bad after just a couple of weeks. Before refrigeration, this was the only way to keep food fresh. Pickling was another option for storing food. The reason why we can't drink seawater is the salt content. The percentage of this mineral in our blood is nearly 4 times lower than the percentage of salt in seawater. Our body simply cannot process such a high amount of the substance. When we intake salt as part of our diet, we also drink liquids. When you serve pretzels, you probably have a glass of water or juice nearby. It helps quench the thirst and keep the salt levels in check. If we drink water straight from the ocean, the exact opposite happens. We just become thirstier. Our body absorbs both water and salt. They end up in our bloodstream. The organs responsible for getting all this salt out of our blood are the kidneys. But they need water to perform their duty. The higher the salt content, the more water they need to wash it away. When the process repeats itself several times over, you become dehydrated. This is the process of losing water from the body. And there's another catch. You start releasing more water than you take in when you drink seawater. The difference leaves you thirstier than you were when you started drinking seawater. Not a good idea to begin with. But some marine mammals, such as whales, seals, and even seagulls, can drink water from the sea, just like we drink tap water. The kidneys of these mammals are super efficient. Birds have special glands in their beaks that prevent salt from getting inside their bloodstream. Scientists found that the only land animal that can drink seawater is the camel. And if you ever wondered if fish drank seawater, they do. The gills and kidneys help them pump out the excess salt. For humans to drink ocean water, it first needs to go through desalinization. This is the process of removing salt from seawater, and there's a lot of it to take away. Estimates show that if we laid out all the sea salt across Earth's landmass, it would be higher than the Statue of Liberty. That's why desalinization on a global scale isn't realistic. Right now, less than 0.5% of the drinking water we produce comes from seawater. And the demand for potable water is only going to increase. The current rate of consumption means that the demand for fresh water doubles every 20 years. The biggest issue with desalinization is the energy cost. It takes 10 times more energy than other water production methods, and the carbon footprint is huge. Large desalinization plants often need to have their own power stations. This is all because of the technology behind the process. Salt dissolves easily in water. It creates a strong chemical bond with water that is hard to break. Desalinization facilities mostly use reverse osmosis to achieve this. Large pumps exert pressure on seawater to push it through a filter. Its membrane is so fine that each pore is a fraction of the size of a human hair. The filter allows for water molecules to pass. Larger salt molecules remain trapped in the membrane. For every quarter of a gallon of fresh water the plant generates through desalinization, there is the same amount of water that is now twice as salty. Hardly the ideal method of water purification. The idea that humans could drink seawater isn't new. In the mid-4th century BCE, the famous Greek philosopher Aristotle considered using a series of filters to remove salt from water. Ships in the 16th century had small, portable distilleries that could boil seawater. This was merely patchwork, since exposing seawater to high temperatures doesn't make it drinkable. Such thermal processing only sterilizes the water. You would need to catch the steam that evaporates and wait for it to cool down before it's safe to drink. This is a complex and time-consuming method that is probably not worth the effort. Let us imagine for a second that we got rid of all the salt from the Earth's oceans. We would get an endless supply of drinking water. But at what cost? There are millions of animal and plant species that are adapted to salt water. These include plankton, the basis of all marine life. They wouldn't have enough time to adapt to the new conditions. Not all fish are like the salmon, which thrives both in fresh and salt water. The sudden switch would also have a profound effect on our planet. Since freshwater is less dense, it would immediately cause the ice cap in the Arctic to sink by 4 inches. This would trigger the largest tidal wave the planet has ever seen. Although the idea of desalinization on a global scale sounds good on paper, we should take it with a grain of salt. Scientists and geologists are out there in the vast ocean, towing these trusty devices, also known as streamer cables. They drop these cables about 16 to 65 feet deep, with each stretching over 20,000 feet long. Now you can imagine that this whole setup creates quite a commotion underwater, attracting all sorts of curious creatures. And guess who shows up for the party? Sharks. Yep, these toothy pals are drawn to the magnetic fields of the streamer cables and sometimes mistake them for a chewy snack. Now, before you start thinking that sharks have a personal vendetta against these cables, let me tell you something. This is not a new problem. It's been going on since the 1980s. Even big players like Google have faced these underwater cable conundrums. They had to surround these internet cables with a fancy material to protect them from shark teeth. I mean, can you imagine a shark causing a delay in your internet browsing? That's one hungry predator with a serious grudge against technology. So, why exactly are sharks so keen on these cables? Well, no one knows for sure. Some scientists think it's because sharks have a thing for electromagnetic fields and get curious. Others believe they just have a thing for anything cable-shaped. It's not all sharks that cause such problems, but which of them are the troublemakers in this aquatic tale? Well, it depends on the depth of the cables. For example, when it comes to a particular depth, the bull sharks seem to be the mischief makers. These bad boys have solid gray physiques and short snouts. They're like the bullies of the underwater neighborhood, causing trouble wherever they go. Bull sharks are widely found in tropical and warm waters around the world, and they seem to have a knack for seeking out these streamer cables. Now I know what you're thinking. Did these scientists really catch a group of bull sharks and make them bite cables just for science? Nope, they're way too clever for that. Instead, they used a 3D scan of an authentic bull shark jaw to create a computer model. Talk about high tech. They simulated shark attacks on the cables, measuring the impact and compression forces. It turns out that a shark can really do a number on those cables. But here's the kicker. The strength of the cables depends on how fast the shark is swimming when it decides to take a chomp. So if you see a shark cruising by at top speed, you better watch out for those cables. But wait, we can't blame the poor sharks entirely for the fate of these underwater cables. A 2009 report points out that a lot of fish have a considerable history of nibbling on cables. It's like a buffet for these underwater creatures. Barracudas, sharks from shallow and deep waters, and even some other sneaky culprits have been identified as cable biters. They just can't resist sinking their teeth into the cable wrapping, which then lets the power conductor hang out with the seawater. It's a recipe for cable failure. Still curious about the fascinating world of cable installation? Did you know that more than over 90% of international data takes a watery journey? These cables, which are like underwater highways, stretch for hundreds of thousands of miles beneath the ocean's surface, reaching depths as deep as the size of Mount Everest. Now, you might be wondering how these cables are placed. Well, it's not as simple as dropping wires in the water like in the cartoons. In fact, it requires some careful planning and specialized boats called cable layers. These brave boats meticulously run the cables across the flat surfaces of the ocean floor, making sure to steer clear of all obstacles that Mother Nature throws their way. When it comes to cable sizes, the shallow water cables are about as thick as a soda can. On the other hand, deep water cables are way smaller, measuring up to the size of a marker. Why the difference, you ask? Well, it's all about vulnerability. Way down there, 8,000 feet below sea level, there isn't much action going on. Therefore, these deep-sea cables don't need as much shielding wire for protection. They're like the skinny swimmers of the cable world, gliding through the depths with ease. But let's not forget about the installation costs. Brace yourself, because placing a cable across the vast expanse of the ocean is no bargain. We're talking about millions of dollars. Now, the actual price may vary depending on factors like the total length of the cable and its destination. But trust me, it's definitely not pocket change. Installing shallow water cables is quite the spectacle. They're carefully stuffed beneath the ocean floor using high-pressure water jets. It's like giving these cables a cozy underground home, shielding them from the whims of the ocean currents. So, while cable installation may be slow, and, let's face it, a bit expensive, it's truly a remarkable feat of engineering. The underwater world is a complex and delicate ecosystem, and the cable layers take great care to ensure that their installations don't disrupt the marine life and habitats that call the ocean home. It's a balancing act between technological progress and oceanic conservation, and they're doing a pretty good job at it. Whenever you browse the internet, remember that your cat videos and funny memes might just be zipping through those submarine cables deep beneath the waves. But burying cables safely underwater isn't actually a modern idea, you know. Hold on tight because we're going on a time-traveling adventure back to the mid-19th century. Picture this. It's 1854, and something groundbreaking is about to happen. The installation of the very first transatlantic telegraph cable begins, linking the distant shores of Ireland and Newfoundland. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, "Old news, buddy," let's remember that this was a pretty big deal back then. Fast forward 4 years, and the moment of truth arrives. The first transmission is sent through the cable, carrying a message that goes something like this. Laws. White House received 5-minute signal. Coil signals too weak to relay. Try drive slow and regular. I have put intermediate pulley. Reply by coils. Okay. Maybe not the most exhilarating message ever sent. But hey, they were just getting started. Now, let's put ourselves in the shoes of those remarkable folks involved in this undersea endeavor. Imagine being the lead electrician of the Atlantic Telegraph Company, also known as White House, in the message. He must have been quite the electrician extraordinaire. To put things into perspective, while our cable pioneers were busy laying the groundwork for transatlantic communication, the world outside was bustling with activity. Charles Dickens, that literary genius, was still crafting his timeless novels. Meanwhile, a little settlement named Dallas was officially incorporated in the vast state of Texas. It's pretty incredible to think about how far we've come since then, with our high-speed internet and seamless global communication. Could you really take down the internet by simply going underwater with a pair of wire cutters? Well, technically, yes. You'll need to be all geared up, wearing your snazzy scuba suit and holding a pair of trusty wire cutters. You can also add a mischievous grin on your face just to create the right ambiance, don't you agree? Now, let's get serious. Cutting through those super important submarine communications cables is no easy task. They carry thousands of seriously dangerous volts. But here's the deal. Someone actually did it in Egypt back in 2013. A group of daring individuals wearing their sleek wetsuits and equipped with wire cutters decided to give it a go. Their target? The Southeast Asia Middle East West, Europe E4 cable. A whopping 500-mile lifeline that connects 3 continents. As soon as those mischievous cable cutters did their thing, chaos ensued. Internet speeds in Egypt took a nosedive, plummeting by a staggering 60%. Can you imagine the frustration of trying to load a cute puppy video and having to wait for ages? But hey, let's keep things lighthearted here. The internet, like a phoenix, rose from the ashes once the cable was repaired. Speeds were restored, and everyone could once again binge-watch their favorite shows and indulge in endless rounds of online gaming.
Not a lot of people have heard of this mysterious body of water named after famous English explorer Sir Francis Drake. Even though Drake himself never sailed through these waters, one of his ships did pass near this location and discovered a connection between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. That's how the area got named the Drake Passage in 1578. Soon enough, the passage became known for some mysterious disappearances. It got the reputation of being the roughest and most unpredictable stretch of water in the world. It's now known for its strong winds and rough seas, with waves that can reach up to 60 feet in height. The passage also has powerful currents with speeds never seen before. Does it sound like a good start to an adventure book? Sure, it doesn't make the place any less real. If you ever decide to travel between the southern tip of South America and the southern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula, you will come across the infamous Drake Passage. We call this place the Drake Passage today, but locals still believe it should be named after Spanish explorer Francisco de Oces. He was a Spanish navigator who, in 1525, led the first known European expedition to navigate the Drake Passage. The trip was part of an attempt of Spain to find a new route to the Spice Islands in the East Indies. Oces and his 2 ships, the San Lesmes and the Santiago, sailed through the Strait of Magellan and into the Drake Passage, where they encountered treacherous weather and rough seas. Despite the difficulties, they successfully navigated the passage and became the first Europeans known to have done so. However, the expedition failed to find a new trade route, and the crew returned to Spain with no significant discoveries. Some years later, in 1616, another ship captained by Dutch navigator Willem Schouten made one of the most successful voyages through the Drake Passage. Despite the difficulties of navigating the often turbulent seas, eventually, the Drake Passage became an important part of international trade routes in the 19th and early 20th centuries. But this dangerous area holds many secrets. The record of one of the most famous events that happened here takes us back to the year 1914. During that time, a British explorer named Shackleton wanted to travel to Antarctica with 27 men split between 2 ships. Those were named the Endurance and the Aurora. the explorers wanted to check out two routes that reached the continent. But in 1915, the Endurance got stuck in ice while crossing the Drake Passage and was slowly crushed. Shackleton and his crew had to leave the ship and could only gather some personal belongings. The Endurance eventually sank, and the crew had to survive on ice for a while. The mission changed from exploring to surviving, and only in 1916 all the men were rescued. The Aurora suffered a similar fate. It also got stuck in ice, and 3 men were lost at sea before the rest of the crew was rescued in 1917. For many years, the ship Endurance was thought to have been lost forever. But in 2022, a group of specialists went on a trip to find it. They left from Cape Town, South Africa on February 5th. The leader of the group said it was most likely the most difficult shipwreck search in history. They used special equipment to find the ship under the water and then used a special underwater camera to take a closer look. The members of the team were sure they had found the Endurance because it was in a place where very few ships had ever been. Despite being 10,000 feet underwater, the Endurance didn't look so shabby. It was actually pretty well preserved for a ship that had been underwater for more than 100 years. The explorers were still even able to see the word Endurance written on it. But it's not just ships that have a hard time with the Drake Passage. A plane with 38 people on board seemed to have disappeared over the Drake Passage in 2019, according to the Chilean authorities. It's believed it hit the icy and rough waters of the passage. Rescuers used ships, planes, and satellites to search for the missing plane and its passengers in the area where it had last sent messages. But the harsh conditions of the Drake Passage made the search very difficult. The exact location where the accident had happened was eventually found, but there were no survivors. The Viking Polaris is another of those ships that got damaged in the passage. Even though it was designed for tough conditions, it was faster than most ships and more stable because of special equipment that kept it balanced. One night, back in 2022, the waves were indeed big, but the ship seemed to be doing well in the rough weather. But then, on its way back to port in Ushuaia, Argentina, a rogue wave suddenly hit the ship without warning. People on board felt like they had been hit by an iceberg. Rogue waves are much taller than other waves around them, and they're very unpredictable. Scientists still don't know exactly why they occur. When this rogue wave hit the Viking Polaris ship, it immediately broke windows on the second deck. Some people on board were hurt, but thankfully, most of them had been properly trained before boarding the ship and knew what they had to do in case of an emergency. The crew was also very good at helping the passengers. Most of them even claimed later that they would board the ship for the second time, despite such an unexpected experience. The boat eventually made it to the port without suffering further damage. What makes this region so hard to cross, though? For starters, the Drake Passage is a wide and deep area of water. It's about 500 miles wide and has a depth of 15,000 feet. Even the most experienced sailors who cross the passage every year say it can be dangerous, unpredictable, and even scary at times. And that's even considering the modern technologies we have today. The area is a mix of warm and cold temperatures, which can result in ravishing storms. Strong winds from the west push the water from the Pacific Ocean into the passage, creating waves and swells that can reach up to 30 feet or more. If accidents happen here, things can get ugly faster than anywhere else. The Drake Passage is a part of the ocean where the water is very cold and has strong currents. The bottom of the ocean there is also not stable, making it harder to find things like a plane or a ship. These days, we have modern technology that helps us feel safe, even when we're passing through rough seas. However, if you are planning to travel by boat to Antarctica, make sure you're ready for the rough sea in the Drake Passage, and for feeling a little uneasy. This can happen even to the most experienced of people when the waters are rough, but it's especially tough if it's your first time. Some people bring remedies to avoid feeling sick, like ginger gum or scented wristbands. Others find it helpful to look at the horizon. Test things out to see what works for you. Once you arrive at the Drake Passage, you'll be surprised to see that lots of different animals live there. You can see many types of dolphins, birds, whales, and penguins. The water in the Drake Passage is also good for small animals like plankton, krill, which bigger animals such as whales, penguins, and seals generally have on their daily menus. As you get closer to Antarctica, watch out for the South Shetland Islands. These might be the first pieces of land you'll see. They're also located in the Antarctic Peninsula and were first discovered in 1819 by British explorer William Smith. The South Shetland Islands are home to severe active volcanoes, including Deception Island and Mount Fenton. The islands are also where you can find a number of endemic species, including the South Shetland Islands Gentoo penguin, which is only found on this piece of land.
So hi, how about exploring some cool and unusual artifacts from the past? Let's go! Have you ever heard of Chinese magic mirrors? These mirrors were made of solid bronze. They had two sides. The front was a shiny polished surface, similar to our typical mirrors. It was the back that did the magic. When bright light fell on the mirror, it looked as if it was transparent, and the pattern on the back of the mirror got projected onto the wall. The backside could have different designs on it, depending on what its creator wanted to depict. Since the mirror was made out of bronze, no one expected this optical illusion to occur. These ancient artifacts date back to 2900 to 2000 BCE. They became popular in China and were produced in large numbers at the time. Eventually, their fame faded away. For centuries, the magic of these mirrors baffled both people and scientists. In the 11th century, Chinese scientist Shen Ku decided to study the mirrors. He conveniently had 3 of them. He was surprised by the ability of the metal to act as if it were transparent. He believed that some tempering techniques created surface wrinkles on the mirror to make it translucent. Yet these wrinkles were imperceptible to the human eye. It turns out he was right. Many scientists tried to decipher the open mirrors over the centuries, but remained clueless. Finally, in 1932, William Bragg discovered that Shen Ku had been right about imperceptible surface wrinkles all along. Every once in a while, people open multiple tabs in a browser and come to a point where there's no room for a new tab. Apparently, this had also been happening long before computers and the internet were invented. Meet the 16th century browser. This is a full-size book wheel. It's kind of a custom-made rotating bookshelf. Gregory Hayworth, a specialist in textual science, says that this tool has a system of epicyclic gears. That means that the book wheel has a working principle like a planetary system. One gear rotates around another. The shelves of the device maintain a constant 45-degree incline that holds the book securely as the giant wheel turns. Back then, people used the tool while writing encyclopedias and editions of classical works. In this kind of work, a person has to have many books open simultaneously so that the information from multiple sources can be gathered easily. Italian engineer Agostino Romelli is the inventor of this piece of early modern machinery. What if I tell you that sponge divers in Greece accidentally found an ancient computer? They pulled out this artifact from a shipwreck near Antikythera Island in 1901. Scientists called it the Antikythera mechanism and labeled it as the first mechanical computer. The machine looks like a hunk of bronze, but it has some kind of mechanism composed of gears and wheels. So, experts first assumed that it was an astronomer's tool. After an X-ray scan, though, they found out that the instrument was far more complex than they thought. The artifact was meant to calculate astronomical positions, track the 4-year cycle of athletic games, and so on. It contained a box with dials on the outside and had an assembly of gear wheels attached. It's still unknown who built an instrument with this level of artistry 2,000 years ago and why this technology was lost. After seeing how sophisticated the device was, scientists accepted that their perception of ancient Greek engineering wasn't really accurate. Professor Michael Edmonds of Cardiff University admits that based on the knowledge they have, this mechanism shouldn't even exist. Edmonds says the machine is one of a kind and its astronomical calculations are precise. For him, the Antikythera mechanism is more valuable than the Mona Lisa. In 1929, scholars working in Topkapi Palace Museum in Turkey discovered a map. It became famous for being the oldest map showing the Americas. Perry Reese drew this detailed map on a gazelle skin in 1513. He depicted Europe, North Africa, the coast of Brazil, and several islands, such as the Azores and Canary Islands. The most exciting thing is that he created the map only 21 years after Columbus had set foot in the New World. Well, it was new to him. Perry Reese was a maritime scholar and a successful naval commander leading the Ottoman fleet. Yet, while drawing the map, he relied not only on his expertise in sailing. He created it by assembling and referring to 20 other regional maps, like the Arab map of India, 4 Portuguese maps, and the map of the western parts drawn by Columbus. Yes, the part he got from Columbus raised the heartbeat of many historians. Columbus drew a map during his 3rd voyage to the New World and sent it to Spain in 1498. It's assumed to be lost. Surprisingly, historians can now understand what Columbus noted down by looking at Perry Reese's map. Fun fact, he also drew another world map in 1528. Even though only about 1/6 of this map has survived, it's clear that it described the northwestern part of the Atlantic, the region from Venezuela to Newfoundland, and the southern tip of Greenland. The map also showed Antarctica centuries before its discovery. Historians had to rethink the chronology of history after getting this crazy information. Perry Reese described Antarctica's topography without ice in great detail. In the 1930s, workers found dozens of stone spheres in Costa Rica. Locally, they're known as bolas de piedra, literally stone balls. They were made by a civilization lost in time. What's interesting about these balls is their shape. They are perfectly spherical. How ancient people could make such precise shapes is a mystery. The spheres are of different sizes. Imagine a small one, like a tennis ball. Then put another one next to it, 7 feet in diameter. The largest spheres weighed 16 tons. Archaeologists are sure that these balls are human-made. Yet their purpose remains unclear. Some archaeologists claim that the spheres could represent the solar system or could be inspired by various stages of the sun and the moon. Others say that the stone's placement refers to the houses of chiefs. Most of the stone spheres were sculpted from granodiorite. It's a hard rock similar to granite. Experts believe that ancient people used smaller rocks from the same material as tools to shape these spheres. They also think that sculptors probably heated portions of the stones and then cooled them rapidly. This could have helped them to remove the outer layers of rock. Our next one is an ancient battery set found in Iraq in 1936. The set consists of a ceramic pot, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. At the top, the iron rod is isolated from the copper by asphalt, and both the rod and cylinder fit inside the mouth of the jar. The copper cylinder isn't watertight, so if the pot was filled with a liquid, it would surround the iron rod as well. Archaeologists focus more on the oxidized iron rod because the vessel just needed to be filled with an acid or alkaline substance to produce an electric charge. After examining this bizarre artifact, an Austrian archaeologist hypothesized that the instrument made use of chemical reactions to generate electrical energy. That's why they likened the instrument to a battery. An ancient civilization might have used it for some kind of electrotherapy. Yet there isn't any electroplated object known from this period. So Koenig's hypothesis was rejected by many archaeologists, but nobody has proven him wrong either. The origin and purpose of the vessel remain unclear to this day. So, want to see the world's oldest art studio? In 2011, archaeologists found 100,000-year-old shells in a South African cave. Those shells were used for paint making. A coating of bright red powder on the inside of a pair of shells is the proof. Archaeologists say they found a complete kit used to produce a pigmented mixture. Now, in a different part of the cave, several paintings were displayed with little price tags on them intended for sale. Nah, just kidding. Although that big one over there would look good over my couch. From thousands of dollars worth of treasure to brand new phones and ancient cities, let's dive into the water and see what we can find. Imagine going to the river to enjoy a boat ride. Who wouldn't want to take a couple of pics to make the memories of this trip last forever? Oops, the water splashed. Luckily, you've taken precautions and put your gadget in a waterproof bag. But what if you drop your phone to the bottom of the lake along with this case? This is what happened to some people. A scuba diver and a YouTuber dived into a river popular with tourists and lost some of their gear worth $20,000, including new iPhones and some jewelry. Oops. You might be familiar with the image of a car getting pulled out of the water, either from the movies or TV news. Large cargo vessels sometimes sink, and trucks inside them go along. That's what happened with the Thistlegorm wreck. It sunk in 1941 in the Red Sea, and these Bedford trucks were inside. Want to see something more valuable, like treasure? A British cargo ship was carrying a heavy load of silver ingots, but the vessel sank. Treasure seekers knew there was silver on the ship. Since the 1940s, they've been looking for it. The Odyssey Marine team got lucky. They made the discovery in 2011. The treasure was more than 14,000 feet below the surface. The ship had carried more than 110 tons of silver ingots. Finders keepers. The Odyssey team kept 80% of the treasure and gave 20% to Her Majesty's Treasury. Of course, there were more items on the ship, like letters, teapots, and silk sheets. You can see them in the exhibition called Voices from the Deep at London's Postal Museum. Now how about some underwater art? Sure, here you go, Polynesian moai statues. These statues have been discovered in several areas across the world. For instance, Easter Island is full of different size statues, but many of them can also be found in Cancun, Isla Mujeres, and Punta Nizu, Mexico. Seeing full-body statues from thousands of years ago under the water would probably be a lifetime experience. Gold coins are also popular items found in shipwrecks. Many divers come across coins worth a lot of money. But there's one diver in Florida who truly hit the jackpot. In 2015, they stumbled upon nearly $1 million worth of treasure. The discovery was 51 gold coins, 40 feet of ornate gold chains, and a rare coin that was made for Philip V, the King of Spain. They were once frightening and dangerous, and they still look spooky. Yo-ho! I'm talking about pirate ships. One pirate shipwreck from the 18th century was excavated off the coast of Colombia in 2015. The treasure found there was worth between $4 and $17 billion. It contained precious stones, gold, and many other items. The next one is an underwater city. Neapolis is a city washed away by a tsunami. It was built on the coast of North Africa nearly 1,700 years ago. Divers uncovered the city's remains in 2017. Researchers have also discovered Roman columns, as well as household goods and tools. Now, let's go all the way back to 1503. Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama was fighting a storm when he lost his ship Esmeralda. The ship was discovered in 1998, but it had to wait for more than a decade to be excavated. Researchers found navigational tools there. They didn't have as much value as Spanish gold, but they were historical treasures. Now, in Amsterdam, they fish for bikes in canals. 1/3 of working Amsterdammers cycle to work. Others use their bikes for different purposes, like exercising, going shopping, and so on. There are more bikes in Amsterdam than permanent residents. Unfortunately, many bicycles and even some cars end up in Amsterdam's canals. The fact that Amsterdam has 165 canals with a combined length of 60 miles doesn't make the authorities' job easier. Obviously, the owners don't throw their bikes into the water. Bikes can end up in the canals because of strong winds, vandalism, theft, or by accident. Every year, authorities fish up between 12,000 and 15,000 bikes. Our next one is a lost city. Heraklion was ancient Egypt's gateway to the Mediterranean. It became submerged and hidden under the sand. This city was famous. Maybe you've even heard about it. It was mentioned in the legend about Helen from Sparta and Paris from Troy. So, how was this ancient city discovered? In the early 2000s, a team of divers found a huge fragment of rock on the seabed and took it up to dry land. It turned out that it was a piece of the statue of Hapi, who was the lord of the river of ancient Egyptians. The team continued searching and found 6 other pieces. Around them, they saw temple ruins, pieces of pottery, jewelry, coins, oil lamps, and so on. Even an old copy of the New York Times. Nah, not really. Granada Underwater Sculpture Park is the world's first, what else, underwater sculpture park. Why is this park so special, besides being located in the beautiful waters of the Caribbean? You can see the park on a snorkeling or scuba diving trip. The sculptures are about 9 to 16 feet underwater. The atmosphere and the experience itself make it special. The sculptures are made from concrete and steel. Some of them weigh as much as 15 tons. They're covered with underwater creatures. The statues were put there to help protect reefs, maintain the health of the ecosystem, and restore underwater life in that area. Now, submarines are designed to go underwater, so maybe you wouldn't expect to see them on this list. But submarines do, in fact, sink. Divers have discovered many submarines. For instance, an Australian submarine was found off the coast of Papua New Guinea more than a century after it had sunk. Now here's another submerged city, but this one was left underwater on purpose. You can see the ancient ruins of Lion City in a lake in China. This lake was created in 1959 when the valley, at the base of Five Lions Mountain, was flooded to create a hydroelectric power station. The 1,400-year-old city, now ruins, got submerged by this flow and stayed this way for over 50 years. It lay untouched at the bottom of the lake until its exploration started in 2001. Divers found out that many structures, carvings, guardian lions, and arches were still preserved. Researchers mapped and documented Lion City. They also looked for a way to protect these structures from further damage. In 2011, the city was announced to be an historic relic under protection. When you see the ruins of Lion City for the first time, the view will take your breath away. So don't forget to hold your breath. Imagine swimming in the dark waters. As you're approaching the city, you see its huge walls and extensive carvings. Marvelous, isn't it? The Cancun Underwater Museum is probably the largest museum of its kind in the whole world. It wasn't lost, per se, but now it's home to an aquatic ecosystem. Who wouldn't want to combine scuba diving and snorkeling with a visit to a world-class garden with 500 sculptures? Placed 30 feet under the surface, these sculptures are made from pH-neutral marine concrete so that they can stay on the ocean floor. Plus, here, the sculptures change over time, unlike in a traditional museum. That's because they become part of the underwater environment and a home to various plant and animal species. In one installation, nearly 450 life-size figurines are grouped together to hint at the harmonious coexistence of humanity. There is also the Anthropocene, which is an actual submerged Volkswagen Beetle placed by the Manchonis Reef. Okay, this is not a lost and found item, but this is just, hey, it's a giant jellyfish and I wanted you to see it. This creature is known as the lion's mane jellyfish, and it's the largest known species of jellyfish. So, I'm happy now. And have you ever discovered anything underwater?
Do you know how harsh the water around undersea volcanoes is? It is so acidic that some samples even showed it to be at a level between stomach acid and battery acid. This water also contains so many chemicals that are toxic to normal marine creatures and plants. And yet, some species have found a way to live near or inside hydrothermal vents, like this special type of shrimp. This mysterious creature from the dark depths of the ocean has adapted to grazing bacterial filaments using its small claws, which are similar to garden shears. Hydrothermal vents stemming from the volcano coat the rocky surface, which means that all those creatures living down there get something to eat. In fact, undersea volcanoes provide 3 very important life-sustaining elements in those areas: minerals, hot water, and bacteria. Whenever there's an open fissure in the ocean floor, water seeps into it. Bacteria living in the crust of our planet then move in and remain in the hot water. The temperature of the water there can go up to 750 degrees. When the fissure erupts and expels the heated water, these bacteria get expelled along with it. There's something else that comes along for the ride: many nutritious minerals that resided in the rock that has been dissolved by the superhot water. The warmth coming from the vent and the minerals sustain the bacteria and give them the perfect chance to multiply. In many cases, the first sign of life around an underwater volcano is a thick coating of bacteria. The bacteria develop stable colonies, which is why other deep-sea creatures that inhabit these dark areas use them as food, like these shrimp. They're trying to eat that fast-growing bacteria and at the same time do their best to avoid the hazards of all the volcanic eruptions. The waters surrounding undersea volcanoes are usually too acidic and hot for humans to dive to, even when there is no lava, ash, or steam spewing from the craters. But when a group of researchers took adequate equipment and finally managed to leave their camera in the hot acidic waters for an hour, they had no idea that they were going to find... Are those sharks? They were hiding in the deep, orange, murky waters around the Solomon Islands submerged Kavachi. Different shark species, including hammerheads, scalloped hammerheads, and reef sharks. The story gets even better when you realize Kavachi is an active volcano with pretty common eruptions. Apparently, submarine boiling lava and underwater explosions don't scare those sharks at all. It's their home, where they feel safe and comfortable. They must have done a great job evolving into this harsh environment over millions and millions of years. So now they can swim through steam and lava without any issue. One of the reasons could be the special pores that they have near their snouts. One of these theories even says if these pores allow sharks to sense changes in the magnetic field of our planet. And sharks need that information for homing and migration, but that also means that they can detect cyclones and hurricanes, thus able to skillfully avoid them and similar dangerous situations in time. Back then, scientists also discovered a sleeper shark about 12 miles from the volcano. It's a specific type of shark that usually lives in the northern Atlantic and Pacific, or in some cases even further south near Antarctica in Australia. Alright, now let's check out this unusual worm. Don't let its rainbow glow fool you. This mysterious creature is actually a scary predator, with jaws you usually see in horror movies. This creep lives 3,900 feet deep, down in the muddy seafloor near northern New Zealand. A team of researchers took a 3-week expedition throughout deep-sea areas in the volcano-rich Kermadec Ridge. This enormous area included 3,800 square miles of canyons, continental slopes, mountains, and hydrothermal vents, parts where undersea volcanoes release gases and hot water. And that's where they found this thing. There are 10,000 species of these worms in the oceans. Most of them have tails and segmented bodies, but they usually look pretty different from one another, depending on the area where they live. There is also a tube worm, which we also call the Pompeii worm. This type lives in hydrothermal vents, deep down on the ocean floor. The temperature down there sometimes goes over 140 degrees. Up next, we got a snaggletooth dragonfish. A team of researchers found these tiny critters in underwater volcanoes near the coast of Sydney. It's a black fish with translucent fangs that looks way scarier than most fish you'd see close to the surface because it lives in warm, acidic water near undersea volcanoes. Humans rarely get to see these deep-sea fish. All right, how about a lobster? The Uroptychus squat lobster lives in depths of up to 4,600 feet, mostly somewhere around deep-sea coral. They're called squat lobsters because they look similar to true lobsters but are flattened in shape from the top and bottom. They don't go around carrying their shell with them, but their carapace is flexible and soft enough so they can squeeze their body into small crevices. When they do this, they leave their long, sharp claws exposed so they can keep unwanted visitors away. It's hard and dangerous to directly go into dark ocean depths and study underwater volcanoes, so researchers came up with a new way to do it. They study deep-sea coral. As they develop, the skeletons of black corals contain a record of the noble gases in seawater. This helps scientists collect information on volcanic activity near these corals. Check out these unusual yellowish creatures known as snake stars. Researchers saw them on an undersea peak at a depth of 4,000 feet. They spend most of their time wrapped around coral branches. That's where they can easily capture food particles from the perches around them. Volcanic vents themselves hide some very pretty unusual creatures, such as these small, hairy, red-eyed crabs, too. They live among rocks on the summit of seamounts in dark depths of up to 3,000 feet. There are crabs that live even deeper than that, 1.5 miles, on the ocean floor near Antarctica. They got their nickname Hoff crabs because of their hairy chest and are part of a lost world of deep-sea creatures that live around volcanic vents at great depths. Big male Hoff crabs spend most of their time highest on the mineral spires of the vents. That's actually the closest to the hot fluids that go out of them, where smaller male crabs live at the base of the mineral spires. After they get together, females crawl away, looking for the warm fluids that seep from the sea floor. They are rich in minerals, but they can be toxic to their young, so they need to get far away. This way, female crabs move to a safe place and hide from the potential predators, like seven-armed sea stars and big sea anemones. Wow, the cavalcade just never ends, huh? Now, these next creatures, the Galapagos snakes, don't live in undersea volcanoes, but it's still fascinating how they've managed to adjust to living on the summits of volcanoes. The Galapagos Islands have 21 volcanoes, and 13 of them are active. It's a unique area with many animal species that you won't find anywhere else on the planet. A wide variety of iguanas, tortoises, lizards, geckos, seals, birds, and sea lions, and snakes that decided to inhabit volcanoes. Also, Alaskan fur seals have been popping up in some unusual locations, like the top of a small island that forms the tip of an active undersea volcano, perhaps? Vents there spew steam, mud, and sulfurous gases. Their surface is covered with huge rocks that exploded out of the vent a couple years ago. This place doesn't look that hospitable, but northern fur seals obviously wouldn't agree. Maybe because there's so much food around this island, like squid and northern smooth tongue, a deep water fish. Because of the ease with which they can gather food, it's much easier for them to take care of their young. And check out this giant woolly rat. It lives in the rainforest that surround the extinct volcano called Mount Basavi. Its crater is 2.5 miles wide. There are high walls around the volcano, and at first glance it seems like nothing interesting has been going on here, except for some unusual creatures, like this large, fluffy animal that kind of looks more like a beaver than a regular rat. It's 32 inches long from nose to tail and weighs 3.5 pounds, and it's one of the largest rats in the world. They have a silver-gray coat, and researchers think that they build their nests underground. These rats eat roots and leaves. This extinct volcano is in New Guinea, which is known for its over 70 species of mice and rats. So these woolly rats have obviously adjusted through generations and evolved to live in these unpleasant conditions.
Want to high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. The vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name. its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they got caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near-freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move. So it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, you might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallomorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago. About 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. but there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo Octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The Sea Angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The Squat Anemone Shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The Coconut Crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The Slender Snipe Eel. Slender Snipe Eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The Sea Pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian Carpet Flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. It doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The Flamingo-tongued Sea Snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves.
The Stonefish. Stonefish aren't going to win any beauty contests, unless the pageant is for best rock look-alike. Their tiny, unreflective eyes and rough skin blend in perfectly with their environment. A large head, an even bigger mouth, and a home full of, yeah, it's rocks. And just because you're on the beach doesn't mean you're safe. Stonefish can survive for 24 hours out of the water. Stepping on one, or even handling one, won't be that fun. Their dorsal fin spines have extremely strong venom. It shoots out when they get stepped on, and it can lead to paralysis or even heart failure. You'll need help fast. No wonder they're one of the most dangerous creatures in the water, or anywhere. Be careful when scrambling around rocky areas. They love to play hide and seek. The Deep Sea Dragonfish. If there were a prize for the most hideous fish in the ocean, the deep sea dragonfish would win. With slimy, scaleless skin, massive teeth, and a face only a mother could love, this bad boy of the sea is nothing to mess with. It likes to swim between 700 feet and 6,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, where the waters are the darkest and coldest. Along with some other creatures on this list, the deep sea dragonfish relies on its bioluminescent body parts to catch prey. It also uses its hanging appendage, which boasts a little red light on the end, coming out from its lower jaw. Many fish mistake this little light for prey, luring them right into the jaws of the deep sea dragonfish. Very clever dragonfish, very clever indeed. The Fangtooth. The Mariana Trench is an underwater trench with a depth of 35,000 feet. nearly 7 miles below the ocean's surface. Let that sink in. While scientists know the Mariana Trench exists, it's one of the least explored places on Earth. It's also the deepest area of Earth's oceans. And although many creatures down there probably haven't even been seen by humans yet, scientists have had the creepy pleasure of getting to know the fangtooth. The fangtooth fish shamelessly lives up to its name. Just look at that thing. The fangtooth is carnivorous and feeds on just about anything it can find that gets caught in its sharp-toothed mouth. These fish rely on their contact chemoreception to find prey. In other words, they can sense chemical residue that comes off of other living organisms in the deep sea. This is because they don't have any light-producing cells on their bodies, unlike many other deep-sea fish. On top of all that, it's pretty dark down there, so whatever crosses their path, they chomp on. While these guys look pretty scary, they're not a threat to humans. They only grow about 7 inches long. Even so, I wouldn't want to run into one of these things during a relaxing swim in the ocean. The Dunkleosteus. Strangely enough, this prehistoric fish, known as the T-Rex of the seas, had no teeth. Those were replaced with bony plates that allowed it to have the strongest bite among other monsters of its size. The goblin shark. If you thought the movies about sharks were scary, this next deep-sea creature will make you swear off going for dips in the ocean forever. However, it lives 3,000 feet underwater, so you'll never likely see it face to face. The goblin shark looks like a cross between a shark and a creature from your worst nightmare. These sharks boast a protruding sword-like snout with a jaw that juts out to match. Unlike other sharks that have more of a gray hue, this creepy thing looks not so pretty and pink. Aside from their scary demeanor, what do scientists really know about the goblin shark? Well, not much, except that they can grow up to 18 feet in length. Looks like there's still a lot to learn about these guys, if you dare to. By the way, did you know that sharks don't sleep? Many species have to keep water moving over their gills to get oxygen, so they can't fall into a deep sleep like we do. That's why they stay half awake during rest. Typically, sharks don't even close their eyes. The cookie cutter shark. This shark is a living horror, with lower teeth being big and sharp, while the upper ones are much smaller. When its teeth fall off, the shark eats them to maintain calcium levels. Pretty smart solution for a shark. The frilled shark. Studying the frilled shark is like looking through a portal back to prehistoric times. That's because scientists think that these eel-like sharks haven't changed much since their oldest ancestors roamed the deep sea waters, so they're sometimes referred to as living fossils. These sharks' mouths are filled with a terrifying 25 rows of backward-facing sharp teeth, 300 in total. They're designed to grasp prey and hold them tight so they can't get away, according to early studies of the shark conducted in 1884 and published in the Bulletin of the Essex Institute. Luckily for swimmers, the frilled sharks live between 390 feet and 4,200 feet below the ocean's surface, so they'll probably never run into them. Probably. This is probably the worst nightmare of any dentist. The northern stargazer. Take a look at this cutie. The northern stargazer is definitely not something you'd wish to see on the ocean floor. This horrid creature hides its body under the sand, leaving its face above to wait for prey. The tasseled wobbegong. Here's another carpet shark on our list. It lies low on the bottom of the sea and patiently waits for its prey to come by. The Australian ghost shark. The Australian ghost shark isn't really even a shark, but a very bony fish. It's also a living fossil. It hasn't changed within the last 400 million years. Believe it or not, sharks and humans have a common ancestor that lived around 440 million years ago. Even though we both evolved in our own way, there are still some signs of that connection. For example, the genome of an elephant shark is very similar to humans. The Leopleurodon. This list of terrifying creatures would be incomplete without mentioning the terrifying and prehistoric Leopleurodon. This carnivorous marine reptile existed during the Colovian stage of the Middle Jurassic era and ruled the waters at 9 feet in length. Scientists believe Leopleurodon thrived in this deep-sea trench because of its ability to swim long distances and its 4 paddle-like limbs. While they probably weren't able to propel themselves toward prey like other animals of the area, they did manage to accelerate and attack very ruthlessly and efficiently. Additionally, they relied on their long snouts to smell prey, which leads scientists to believe they didn't rely on sight for hunting. This means they could have thrived in the dark Mariana Trench. Around 150 million years ago, Leopleurodon became extinct due to competition for prey against other thriving marine reptiles. And I think I speak for all of us when I say, thank goodness for that. Considering that scientists have only explored 5% of the ocean floor and found some of the scariest sea creatures imaginable, one can only dream of what other animals reside in the deep sea waters. Perhaps it's best to keep them in your imagination. Am I right? The megamouth shark. This shark is a filter feeder, and it's friendly to humans, although its huge mouth can look quite threatening. Like basking sharks, it swims with its mouth constantly wide open, as if it were on Twitter. The gulper eel. This deep-sea eel has an easily distended belly that allows it to swallow prey twice its size in a single monstrous bite. They have very unusual jaw shapes and can reach about 2 to 3 feet in length. Do you see that large log near the ocean floor? Maybe it's part of an old ship. Treasure, gold, diamonds, I'm rich! Well, as you get closer, you notice something. It's swimming! It's not a shark or a dolphin, it's a saltwater crocodile! Now don't panic. If you bump into one of these reptiles in the sea, it's unlikely it'll think of you as food. Crocodiles have a special valve in their throat that stops them from drowning underwater, but that doesn't mean they can't bite. Usually, they're heading to a nearby island, and the quickest way there is to body surf. They can't really take the ferry, you know. Watching one from a distance should be okay. Just don't swim to shore right away. They love to ambush their lunch in shallow water. If there's one time I'd want to see a great white shark, it's when I'm diving with crocodiles. They'll gladly take a crocodile-sized nibble, given the right motivation. Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the Mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kind of like Nessie to me.
450 million years ago, no, I wasn't around then, the sea level was higher, coral reefs started to form, the climate on our planet was stable and warm, not even dinosaurs were around yet. The time when bony and jawed fish we know as sharks appeared. They've been dominating the oceans and making other marine creatures flee in fear ever since. Many of them, like great white sharks, have evolved and adjusted to life in the open ocean as hunters with a pretty high position in the food chain. They're less diverse today than before. One of the reasons is the asteroid strike from the age of dinosaurs. After it reduced the number of shark species, only smaller and deep-water kinds that ate primarily fish survived. They started getting bigger over time. Near the surface, sharks such as makos or great white ones develop faster movements and are somewhat between gray and blue to blend in with their surroundings. The epaulet shark can even walk on the land. It can't take a walk on the beach because it can't breathe outside of the water, but it lives on coral flats in shallow tropical waters, so it can walk in kind of a crawling motion. But deep down below, there are mysterious, alien-looking, often huge shark species that didn't come to the surface, which is why they didn't need to adjust to the new environment and different conditions. They haven't changed a lot through time, so they're some living fossils. These creatures mostly don't have 5 gill slits, the most common number, but 6 or 7. It's because there's less oxygen the deeper you go in the ocean, so they need more gill slits. Sharks on the surface evolved to have fewer gill slits. 6-gill sharks are the most primitive sharks we have today. Their skeletons are like those of ancient extinct sharks, and they can survive only in very deep waters. Like cats, sharks have a layer of reflective cells placed inside their eyes, which helps them see better in the dark, deep sea or cloudy waters. Sharks on the surface have big eyes because they evolved to hunt in the sunlight, so they tend to rely on their vision. Those that live in shallow waters have small eyes, so they can protect themselves from the sand. Like some other deep-sea creatures, six-gill sharks also have bigger eyes to take in as much light as possible. They have more light-sensing rods, but don't distinguish colors that well. In the ocean's twilight zone, with the minimum of sunlight, there's a couple of bioluminescent shark species. They don't take in light within their eyes, but produce or re-emit it with their bodies. Their skin or organs have specialized cells that produce a soft blue-green light. Deep-sea creatures that produce their own light do that to attract their prey, deter animals from going after them, or, scientists think, communicate with each other. It can even help them to camouflage. They do it by hiding their silhouettes from animals going after them. They produce enough light to match their surroundings. The biggest luminous underwater creature is the kitefin shark, found swimming 980 feet below sea level, preying on groundfish or smaller sharks. It can grow almost 6 feet long and lives 3,200 feet below sea level. Deep-sea sharks are also bigger than those on the surface. The Greenland shark can grow up to 24 feet long, bigger than a great white. There's a thing called deep-sea gigantism. Creatures in nutrient-poor depths of the ocean grow bigger because, that way, they lose less energy as heat. The Greenland shark lives its life in slow motion. It has a slow metabolism and can go very long periods without food. With their slow pace, they evolved to live up to 500 years at depths of 7,200 feet. Sharks in shallow waters catch their prey relying on agility and speed, but for them, it's easier because there's plenty of food on the surface. Deep-sea sharks, with less food and slower life rhythm, had to develop a different style. They're more opportunistic, definitely not picky, and don't care if their future meal is alive or not. Frilled shark, another living fossil from the darkest depths, hasn't evolved much through time, and they're one of the last of their kind, with all of their relatives already gone extinct. It grows up to 7 feet long, primarily hunts on squid, and catches other sharks and fish. It looks like a dinosaur, a snake-like face, a long, smooth, thin body that moves in a serpentine way. It can propel itself with the power of its tail and curl like snakes. They don't swim in a straight line like other sharks. Cookie cutter shark grows up to 20 inches. It got the name because of the way it feeds, biting off small pieces. It's a parasite creature, which means it feeds off bigger animals but leaves them alive. They have sharp teeth and sometimes even swallow those that fall off on purpose. Some researchers think it could be because they live in the depths that are nutrient poor. If they swallow the teeth, they could recycle calcium and other material from it. Prickly shark is a rare and unusual creature with many thorn-like denticles and 2 small dorsal fins. It lives mostly in the depths of the Pacific region up to 1,900 feet. Ghost sharks are not even real sharks, but fish closely related to them and rays. They have big pectoral and pelvic fins, 2 dorsal fins, pretty big eyes, and unlike their cousins, have a single external gill opening. Ghost sharks have slender tails and can grow up to 80 inches, silver to blackish color. They sometimes live in rivers and coastal waters, but also in the depths of the ocean of 8,200 feet or even deeper. They are pretty weak swimmers, so they tend to feed on invertebrates and small fish. Goblin sharks. Swimming through the deep sea, this creepy shark with a flabby body suddenly sees a small, innocent squid. It goes toward it, but the potential snack notices it and quickly starts moving to dart away. It seems like the plan could work at first, but then the shark suddenly thrusts the jaw of its mouth and catches the poor little squid in a second. After the meal is finished, the animal simply fits the jaw back into the mouth and goes away as if nothing happened. This is possible because it has a jaw connected to 3-inch-long flaps of skin, which is why it can unfold from the snout. It can grow up to 12 feet long with a weight of 460 pounds. Scientists think goblin sharks are mostly active in the morning and evening. The shark has a long, prominent snout and specific sensing organs on it. It uses them to sense electrical fields in the dark oceanic depths. Seven-gill shark is a big cow shark, brown to silver-gray on top, white underneath, black and white spots, with a thick body, a small dorsal fin, and a wide, blunt snout. It can grow up to 10 feet long, mostly lives in the depth of 1,870 feet, but you can also find it in deep channels and bays. It can be aggressive toward humans if provoked, so don't. Like most deep-sea creatures, it's an opportunistic hunter that's not quite picky but likes to go after dolphins, seals, porpoises, and other marine animals. Megamouth sharks mostly live in the depths of 15,000 feet and spend most of their time in the dark, like me. Scientists discovered it in 1976 because it went near the surface at night to feed on zooplankton. That's the only time these sharks go there. During the day, they return to their quiet, dark, and mysterious depths. They are filter feeders, which means they keep their mouths wide open while swimming, so they filter the planktons they like to eat. There are organs that produce light inside of their mouths, which attracts potential prey, such as pelagic crustaceans. These sharks live in the deep parts of the ocean, but you can rarely find them below almost 2 miles. Scientists think some other, stronger bony fishes outcompeted them. Deep parts of oceans became oxygenated around 70 million years ago, and sharks have been around way longer. But bony fishes adjusted and adapted efficient ways to use oxygen, while sharks were slow with adaptations, so they lost. Also, oceanic depths are way colder, which is challenging for fish and the rest of cold-blooded animals because the speed of their metabolism widely depends upon the external temperature.
The sea, this unrelenting water beast, has been defying all attempts to tame it for centuries. Many ships driven by the wind have gone through the harshest parts of the world. Some have survived the struggle with the sea, and many have come off second best. It's the year 1834. A ship called the Pilgrim is setting a course to sail from California to Boston. The journey will venture around South America and then past Cape Horn of Chile. Richard signs up as a merchant seaman aboard the Pilgrim. This is his first voyage at sea. The crew tells Richard stories of the Drake Passage off Cape Horn, a route that's legendary for its dangers. Countless ships and sailors have disappeared in those waters. Since Cape Horn's discovery in 1526, it's quickly become known to all those that have sailed around it as the ultimate test of any mariner's skill and of any ship's strength. Those that have survived the journey call Cape Horn a sailor's nightmare. Jack the helmsman, a salty veteran, steers the ship towards this most dangerous of all routes. Jack has been aboard the Pilgrim since it was first commissioned in 1825. He's passed by the Horn many times, each time learning a different lesson from the tests provided by the sea. The Pilgrim has been refitted since its past voyage a year ago. Richard values Jack's experience, given that it's his first journey at sea. Jack assures Richard of his confidence in the Pilgrim, even though it's just a small wooden brig with 2 masts. Jack's aware that wooden vessels are gradually becoming outdated, replaced by new steam-powered ships. But Jack prefers the maneuverability of the Pilgrim and would take it over the steel ships any day. Richard is excited to be aboard. There's so much to explore in life as a merchant seaman, but the guy struggles to acquire his sea legs on the boat. Forceful winds make the Pilgrim move faster, providing Richard with a quick introduction to life at sea. At the same time, nothing can prepare him for what is to be experienced at Cape Horn. It's the southernmost point of land before Antarctica. The gap between the icy continent and Cape Horn holds the infamous Drake Passage. Approximately 700 miles between Cape Horn and the Antarctic Peninsula. Strong winds provide an uninterrupted, steadfast journey toward the Horn. But, as Jack tells Richard, the winds are more concentrated at the Drake Passage. They create a funneling effect, becoming stronger and more unpredictable. Richard is unsure of what this might mean for the Pilgrim, but understands that there's no easier route to travel around South America. A few days pass. The Pilgrim sails by the many islands that make up the western coast of Chile. Although the sea has been relatively calm, Richard continues to deal with his lack of sea legs. His movements are still not very graceful. The constant, ever-swaying deck rises and falls, and Richard finds it hard to get used to the motion. Random large waves hit the Pilgrim from every angle. The ship is quickly approaching Cape Horn. Richard looks towards great thunderous black clouds in the distance. "Welcome to the Horn," Jack says, half laughing. A wry smile upon his face soon disappears. The man gets serious, knowing what awaits them all. Stronger winds start blowing the sails as the crew scrambles to hang onto the ropes. Richard desperately sets to adjust the aft sails, adjusting for the constant change in strong southerly winds. Jack holds firm at the helm, knowing the importance of his role. He's wary of the swell. It can build very quickly the further south they travel. It's crucial the Pilgrim doesn't venture too close to the Horn when they approach. The great darkness that was in the distance is now all around them, filling the sky in every direction. Blackened clouds throw rain and hail down at the crew as they try to resist the enraged weather. Jack is directed by the captain at the helm, changing the direction of the vessel. The temperature has dropped significantly. Barely keeping the water from his eyes, he turns toward the port side bow to provide his face a brief break from the torment of the wind. Looking out into the distance, the man sees the Horn standing alone, surrounded by mist. It's a haunting sight. He steers the Pilgrim along the face of the Horn, the distance getting shorter. The waves shrink in height since the depths become shallower. But these waves are much steeper, and their angle can cause more damage to the wooden vessel. Jack's unsure how much of these waves the Pilgrim can take before the hull is breached. Richard, still posted at the aft sails, watches the water and icebergs floating by. He's unsure how large they actually are, since they're mostly hidden underwater. But he knows to alert Jack if any get too close. Just one iceberg hitting the Pilgrim will be all that the hull can withstand. Dutifully, he watches over the side and into the distance. Icebergs aren't the only thing to look out for. Rogue waves are common in these seas as well. The connecting Antarctic and Pacific Oceans, mixed with stormy weather, form waves together. This creates much larger rogue waves. Such waves have been known to reach up to 100 feet tall. They can destroy most vessels in their path. It'll surely be the end of the Pilgrim if it comes across a rogue wave. Strong currents adjust the route of the Pilgrim, as though the Horn is trying to lure the ship toward its rocky shallows. Slowly, they are getting pulled closer toward the Horn. Jack is fighting the current at the helm. Spinning the wheel, he strains his body as much as he can. Grunting, he plunges the wheel from the port side to starboard and back again. The captain keeps yelling directions. To a novice, they're extremely confusing. But Jack, a hardened veteran, continues to interpret the directions with ease, steering to readjust their course away from the Horn. The captain orders Richard to assess the hull below the decks. With the level of pounding the Drake Passage has provided so far, it's surely harmed the ship in some way. Richard runs to the deck as another sailor yells something at him, but the noise of the sea makes it difficult to hear. A wave hits the side, flowing onto the deck. Richard manages to hang onto the mast before he's almost swept overboard. The entire front deck seems to be underwater. Hanging on as the water rolls off the sides of the ship and waiting for it to clear, Richard watches the Horn slowly go past. Still, it beckons toward the Pilgrim, as though asking for its dues from the crew. The currents are still pulling the ship, while the storm is raging on, with no end of the struggle in sight. The storm is growing ever larger and fiercer. Richard gathers himself to head below and assess the damage. After a slow descent to the lower decks, Richard can finally look over the hull from the ship's quarters. There's no damage from what he can gather. But he's shocked by the depth of the water inside. It's now at waist depth. Cups, amongst other things, float in the water. Even inside the ship, the guy can't escape the waves. Unable to make sense of it all, he stands frozen, listening to the almighty power of Mother Nature outside. The sea roars even more wildly, waves constantly thudding against the hull. It sounds like a somber drumbeat, a slow countdown to the demise of the Pilgrim. Richard forces himself back to the terrors of the above decks, grasping onto the rails to carefully walk the slippery stairs. He leaves the disturbing creaks of the wooden decks. They're soon replaced with the strained sounds of the ropes, the yells of other sailors, and the deafening roar of the sea crashing all around him. Jack is at the helm, focused on his role, still fighting the wind and the waves, even with the addition of ice and frost. It seems that the world around him has set its heart to distract the man from his duty, but Jack pushes on determinedly. For 9 days, the Pilgrim fights the constant changes in stormy weather, facing all kinds of obstacles, but the ship manages to make it through. As they leave the storm behind, the crew sets their course north for their final destination. The sight of the sun peeking through the dark clouds is the most relieving thing Richard has ever experienced. Unfortunately, Richard lost his rations at some stage during the storm. At sea, if your rations are lost, it's your own bad luck. Luckily, Jack is kind enough to share some of his.
Dwarf lantern shark. Sounds kind of like a superhero, huh? This is the smallest shark in the world. It's only the size of your palm, and it can glow in the dark. Well, that's a superpower. Blue-ringed octopus. The most beautiful octopus in the world. But the bright colors of animals usually indicate they're venomous. An antidote to its venom is yet to be found, although this little guy is the size of a TV remote. Sarcastic fringehead. Though this fish is only 12 inches long, it can eat prey much larger. Its jaw can open just like a dinosaur's. The sarcastic fringehead has been known to attempt to swallow a whole octopus. Hey, can't we all just get along? Red lionfish. This beauty has an incredible appetite. It can eat fish 2/3 the size of its body, and it hides the needles on its fins, which contain a potent venom. Striped surgeonfish. It has scalpel-sharp spikes on its fins, not to perform surgery, but to hunt. And unlike a doctor, it has venom on them. Black dragonfish. This is the only fish that can produce infrared light thanks to the chlorophyll in its eyes. It lives only at a depth of 6,600 feet, and you can only reach that depth in a special submarine. Reef stonefish. This genius of camouflage usually lies on the bottom and pretends to be a rock. Tourists can often step on it, and sharp needles on its back can easily cut even through the hard sole of a boot. Viperfish. This fish, the size of your forearm, has the largest teeth in relation to its head in the world. But you're unlikely to encounter it because it lives at a depth of 13,000 feet. Lamprey. These are parasites that stick up to other creatures and live off of them. Only these guys are 10 times bigger than the average river leech. Mega piranha. The most aggressive fish in the world, the size of a Doberman dog. A pack of these guys could leave nothing of an entire cow in just a couple of minutes. Fortunately for all of us, they ceased to exist 8 million years ago. Whew! Black pacu. Pretty ordinary big fish until it opens its mouth. It has human-like teeth, and the richest black pacu even had golden dental crowns. Just kidding. Payara, the most dangerous freshwater resident. It can swallow prey half its size. Even piranhas fear this monster. Anglerfish. It has a fishing rod on its head. It's a bait that lures small fish right into the mouth of this hunter. Slender snipe eel. It's very long and flexible due to the number of vertebrae in its back. There are 750 of them. By comparison, we only have 33 to 34 vertebrae. Barracuda. Its jaw is similar to that of a great white shark, but its trademark is speed. It would beat any Olympic swimmer at 29 miles per hour. Ocean sunfish. It's a fish the size of an adult person, and it's the heaviest bony fish in the world. Although peaceful, thank goodness, they sometimes damage the bottoms of small fishing boats. Frilled shark. Its length would allow it to successfully play basketball. It hunts with the strategy of a snake. The shark bends its body and then makes a sharp dash forward, and it has 300 teeth. Plenty of frills there. Electric eel. Its feature is its electrical organs, which can discharge 4 times as much as a normal household socket. The electric eel's shock can easily stun a large horse. Box jellyfish. It doesn't just drift in the waves near a shore like a regular jellyfish. Oh no! These guys are very fast and can even catch up with a person in the water. And their sting is hazardous. They don't look for trouble, but they're always ready to defend themselves. Goblin shark. Its snout ends in a long blade-like outgrowth, and its jaw could extend all the way to the end of the snout. It's one of the most terrifying sharks in the world, despite its tender pink color. Saltwater crocodile. This is the most bad-tempered crocodile on the planet, and one of the largest at 20 feet. They're not afraid of humans and only consider us as food. Hey, don't snack on me. Great white shark, the most notorious inhabitant of the oceans. Once, a great white shark pierced the bottom of a tourist yacht. The boat sank, but luckily no one was injured or eaten. Greenland shark. These are the real long livers of the marine world. They have a very slow metabolism and can live up to 300 years. For comparison, the oldest human was 122 years old. Giant oarfish. This fish is as long as a giant anaconda, and it holds the title of the largest bonefish in the world. Giant manta ray. This creature might look like it's smiling, but it'll rush at you without hesitation. They reach up to 16 feet in diameter and have a very sharp spike with a neurotoxin. Great. Orca. They can swim at the speed of a car and are as big as a large minivan. And they're the only sea hunters that can jump out onto the coast and grab their prey there. Dunkleosteus. This guy was the size of a limousine. Although it had no teeth, it had bony plates that gave it one of the strongest bites among sea creatures. Camarasaurus. This is an ancient clam of incredible size, but 90% of its entire body was a cone shell. It was heavy, which prevented it from moving very fast. So most of the time, Camarasaurus lay motionless on the bottom, waiting for small fish to swim by. Kronosaurus. It was similar to a crocodile, only several times larger. The remains of one of them contained dinosaur bones, so Kronosaurus hunted not only in the sea, but also on land. Helicoprion. One of the few species to survive the Triassic extinction event. It did so thanks to its high intelligence and a powerful fighting tool, the circular saw-shaped jaw on its nose. Elasmosaurus. Its appearance resembles a giraffe, only twice as big. And these guys were real travelers. They swallowed small rocks to grind their food. 300 rocks from all over the world were found in the remains of one of them. Colossal squid. It weighs as much as 2 polar bears and is 5 times as long as a human. They're extremely rare, but still exist far out in the cold waters of our planet. Humpback whale. Like ordinary whales, they feed on plankton and small fish, using their mouth as a huge net. They use their giant tail to stun large schools of fish. Mosasaurus. Aren't you impressed that I can say these Latin names? No? Oh well. The Mosasaurus were as big as a subway car and were the kings of the seas 66 million years ago. Their jaw and skull were snake-like, and they could swallow their prey whole. Today, we can still find their relatives, the monitor lizards. They monitor where you go. Not really. Melville's Leviathan. Now this guy had the biggest teeth ever known. They were basically as big as half your hand, and their appearance resembled something between an orca and a sperm whale. Leadsichthys. They were bigger than a school bus, but they weren't hunters. Their large size prevented them from being fast, so they fed mostly on plankton. Megalodon. Ooh, the most famous ancient sea creature. They were heavier than a tank or even a small house. Some people think they're still living in the deep waters of the ocean, but this, of course, is not true. Basilosaurus. Giant ancestors of modern whales. They had large lower limbs. Perhaps it's because they used to be land creatures, but in the course of evolution, they gradually moved into the water. Cachalot. Sounds like it should have been on a baseball team. They were almost as long as a basketball court. Their brains weighed 15 pounds. That's 7 times the weight of a human brain. Say whale. Okay, whale. Actually, it's its name, not a command. One of the best swimmers of all whales. Say whale could go up to 31 miles per hour and dive deeper than the height of the Empire State Building. Shastosaurus. Though only bones remain of this monster, calculations say it was as long as a tennis court or as a truck and trailer. Blue whale. The largest mammal to ever live on our planet. Its heart alone weighs as much as a big motorcycle, and its veins are as wide as a big pot. And these guys can sing songs. Lion's mane jellyfish. The world's largest jellyfish. It has a hat 7 feet wide and tentacles as long as a 10-story building. Although they're not dangerous at all, people can still get tangled in their incredible tentacles like in a net. Portuguese man-o'-war. Although its head is very small, just like an ordinary jellyfish, its tentacles are as long as half a soccer field. And these things are venomous. They paralyze fish and anything caught in them, even people. So, stay away, huh? Well, hey there. We dive back in time and into the oceans over 500 million years ago. Just, because we can. Whoa! Watch out! It's not megalodon or giant sea reptiles you need to look out for here. It's a bizarre, unearthly-looking creature called Anomalocaris. The name means unlike any other shrimp. And I think you'll agree, it looks like a nightmarish cross between a shrimp and a modern-day centipede. 2 tentacles protruding from its face, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. Oh yeah, and this thing was about the size of your leg. With a wave-like movement of the flaps on each side of its body, it was graceful for a terrifying creature. It was also more advanced than any other life on this planet at the time. Especially those huge eyes. You have only one lens in each of yours. This giant shrimp had 16,000. That's 4 times more than a common housefly. And you know how good their vision is. Good enough to dodge that swatter every time. All this allowed Annie to become one of the first animals on this planet to feed on others. Yep, here it is. Earth's first hunter. Its favorite meal? Trilobites. Hey, trilobite. Those are the ancient ancestors of crabs. Some of their fossils have marks on them in the same shape as the monster shrimp's mouthparts. Terrors of the past like this got to be so giant thanks to more oxygen in the atmosphere. A perfect example of this, Meganeuropsis. Imagine a dragonfly. Now make it as big as a cat, and with a wingspan longer than your arm. Megan, the monster-sized dragonfly, could easily grab other insects or even small animals, and she ruled the air with quick movements. Back then, there were still no large birds or other airborne enemies for this behemoth bug, so it was safe and free to grow as large as this planet would allow. Piranhas of the past were also jumbo-sized. Mega piranha was about 3 times the size of the river terrors we have today. Its bite force was about the same as a tiger's, and those striped kitties bite down 2 times harder than lions. That means it probably not only dined on other fish and any land creatures that, got too close to the water, but it could also easily crunch down on large turtles and other unlucky shelled creatures. And fun fact, modern-day piranhas bark like dogs when they're about to enter a confrontation. It actually sounds more like a frog's ribbit. But makes you wonder, what did this mega-sized ancient cousin sound like? A bear roaring? How about giant sea scorpions the size of your bed? Go back about 460 million years, and you'd see them swimming under you. And watch out for that tail. Scientists still don't know if these creatures could use it to inject venom like your standard land scorpion. But something tells me I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. Then there's this guy, Therizinosaurus. Terry looks sort of like a goose with long arms. Oh, and did I mention this goose dino is about 2 stories tall and longer than a bus? Yow! Its arms make the T-Rexes look even more bite-sized, each 8 feet long, almost triple the length of T-Rexes. And on the end, razor-sharp claws the size of your whole arm. Now, don't worry about those lengthy claws too much, though. Terry probably used them to cut through giant termite nests. So, this huge reptilian goose was more interested in eating bugs and plants. Another mega monster for you? Megatherium. The giant ground sloth could look a giraffe straight in the eye and weighed as much as a hippo. It moved mainly on its hind legs and used its massive tail as support. He had huge paws with colossal knife-sized claws. The sloth could use them to defend itself from enemies and to bend tree branches in search of food. But the biggest danger to the giant ground sloth wasn't dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers. It was our own species. Yep, humans showed up just in time to meet this fellow and to, eat him up. Titanoboa was a terrifying 50-foot snake, as long as the great megalodon itself. It was also more than 2 times heavier than the heavyweight champion among snakes today, the green anaconda. Crocodiles were a regular on this serpent's menu. Titanoboa could swim 3 times faster than the fastest Olympic swimmer our species has ever seen. It was quicker and more dangerous in the water than outside it. And don't forget the boa part of the snake. This massive snake wasn't venomous. Instead, it liked to squeeze. Remember that giant shrimp from earlier? Well, Opabenia looks like its teeny-tiny finger-sized cousin. And instead of 2 toothy tentacles, this thing had a vacuum hose coming out of its face. On the end of that trunk, what looks like a single crab claw. Add 5 eyes and a mouth under its head, and you've got a recipe for something not of this planet. Only it is. This creature used its trunk like an elephant does. Its claw grabbed food from the bottom of the ocean and brought it up to its mouth. This thing is so weird-looking that, apparently, when the scientists who discovered it presented his findings to an audience, they all laughed as if he were joking. Now, a real-life monster, the Tully monster. From a distance, it looks a bit like Nessie, that long neck and teeth-lined jaws. But get closer, and you'll see it's more like a long nose with a mouth attached at the end, like a mosquito. Its eyes are further back, sticking out of tubes all snail-like. Tully was an ancient mollusk, about the size of your forearm. It probably dined on jellyfish and shrimp 300 million years ago. Thylacus smilus will put a smile on your face as long as you don't get too close. No, it's not a relative of the saber-toothed tiger. It was a marsupial, making it more related to a kangaroo than anything. And if you compare them to body size, its fangs were actually longer than a saber-toothed tiger's. And they grew continuously. As for that beard on its chin, that's actually all chin. The lower jawbone grew down to a point under the mouth. Those fangs were rooted to the skull, going way back to its eyes. When the mouth was closed, that bony beard protected the long, sharp teeth from breakage. Staganapolis, not to be confused with Minneapolis, might look like a big crocodile with a squished-in snout, but it was mostly harmless. Its small head and very few teeth meant the reptile didn't have much to work with when protecting itself. That's what all those armored scales were for, and no need for huge fangs or long rows of razor-sharp teeth when you're a plant eater. That beak-like tip on its nose allowed the stag to dig up plants. So, really, this reptile was more like a 10-foot scaly pig than a croc. Basilosaurus was a type of ancient whale that lived on our planet about 45 million years ago. Not quite as long as a blue whale, but this guy was still big enough to munch down on other whales and even sharks. Some people believe these monsters could still exist today. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen a giant sea dragon, and Basilosaurus fits the description. Plus, 90% of our oceans are unexplored. There's plenty of space to hide a sea monster. But scientists haven't found any fossils of this ancient whale younger than 3.7 million years. So, this myth is busted. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs that ever lived. It can easily be distinguished by those huge spikes on its tail and the bony plates on its back. It was twice as long as a giraffe and nearly 5 times heavier. But compared to its body size, it had the world's smallest brain. It was no larger than a dog's. Pelagornis had the largest wingspan of any bird ever discovered. It was twice the size of the largest bird today, the wandering albatross. Such huge wings made it hard for the bird to take off. It could only do so by jumping off cliffs. And when it finally spread its wings, this giant could only go about 40 miles per hour. The fastest bird today can reach speeds 5 times that. A shimmering portal closes behind your back. A smiley guide greets you. Hey, you're not the first person to travel between the worlds, but such a journey still remains something out of the ordinary. At first sight, the place is not that different from your own. The same people, the same transport, similar architecture. Then why did your friends swear it would be the trip of your life? Your travel agent told you the town you'd be visiting is at the seaside. That's why you ask your guide if you could spend some time near the ocean. He gives you a funny look, but agrees. The day's brilliant, sunny, and hot. It feels only natural to take your clothes off to get some sun. After a while, you get up to go have a swim in foamy waves. But your guide grabs your arm. His grip is unexpectedly strong, his face anxious. No, it was risky enough to come to the beach and stay so close to the water. And now you're going to take a chance with your life? Huh? That's all you can answer. There must be some misunderstanding. What's so dangerous about this beach? Rip currents? The guide suddenly calms down. Don't tell me you don't know why people from your world travel here? You shake your head, and the man starts to laugh. When he's done chuckling, he becomes serious and mutters, "Okay, I'll show you something you won't be able to forget. Ever. Let's go." You walk along the beach, keeping more than enough space between you and the water. What surprises and worries you the most is the eerie silence. The only sound you can hear is waves hitting the shore. No kids cheering, no surfers riding their boards, no fishers waiting for a good catch. Your guide slows down, and you see a small harbor. For some mysterious reason, it's separated from the open ocean by a thick metal fence with massive gates. You and your guide are heading for a large boat, or rather a ship. Just how many people are going to join us on this excursion?" you ask. "It's just the 2 of us and the crew," your guide replies. In our world, it's too dangerous to put to sea on a smaller vessel. And indeed, you notice no fishing boats or yachts nearby. You follow your guide downstairs and see a large cabin with a glass floor. Feel free to step on the glass, it's super thick and literally unbreakable. The ship starts vibrating and moves away from the shore. You're watching the rocky bottom, corals, and schools of colorful fish pass by. The water under the ship is getting darker. All of a sudden, your guide whispers, "Here it is." The creature is enormous, longer than a semi-trailer and almost as long as the vessel you're on. Its body shape resembles that of the modern-day monitor lizard, but longer and more streamlined. This makes the animal more fitted for swimming. Its limbs are short, with webbing between fingers. It also has a wide tail with a broad triangular plate on it. While swimming, the critter keeps its body stiff to reduce the drag through the water. The only thing that's moving is its mighty tail. As soon as you manage to get your voice under control, you scream, "A dino!" Nope, your guide doesn't agree. It's a mosasaur. They aren't dinosaurs. These creatures are reptiles. You must have their close relatives in your world, snakes and monitor lizards. The mosasaur you see is one of the largest species, which are quite rare. There are many kinds of these reptiles, and the smallest is a mere 3 feet long. The average length is 13 feet at the most. But big specimens still occur. That's why we have to build such large, sturdy ships. Just one tail swipe from this beast, and a smaller vessel would be broken in half. The mosasaur, you still find it hard to wrap your mind around it, is swimming under your boat for some time and then swooshes up to the surface. Your guide answers the question in your eyes. Mosasaurs need air. That's why they regularly rise to get some. That's the reason they prefer shallow coastal waters. The creature returns. This time, you get a chance to see its jaws. Each is completed with 2 extra rows of triangular teeth. Behind them, you spot its tongue, and wait, is it really forked? All in all, the creature's mouth looks like one of a snake, including the teeth. They're also curved backward not to let prey slip away. Your guide chooses this moment to start telling you about the awesome creature. Yeah, Mosasaurus evolved around 100 million years ago, but 34 million years later something went wrong, and they didn't disappear like it happened in your world. That's why now our oceans are very different from yours. Fish and mammals in our oceans have developed special traits that allow them to avoid mosasaurs. Plus, thanks to this reptile, we have a much greater diversity of marine species. You notice your mosasaur dashing up and to the left. When it returns, there's something that looks suspiciously like a bird in its jaws. Noticing your surprise, the guide explains mosasaurs eat pretty much anything, from fish and mollusks to seabirds and turtles. Suddenly, your guide screams, scaring you out of your wits. There! Can you see it? Honestly speaking, at first you see nothing. But after straining your eyes, you spot 2 huge shadows circling each other. Your guide is brimming with excitement. You can't imagine how lucky we are! I've been doing this job for 15 years, but I've never seen a mosasaur fighting with a megalodon. For a moment, your mind stops functioning. Has he just said there are megalodons in his world? And then you see it. A giant animal is coming closer. It's almost 60 feet long, bigger than the whale shark, the largest of all the shark species in your world. Your guide keeps blabbing. Both of these creatures are top predators. Mosasaurs are usually a bit smaller than megalodons, but this one's huge! As the sea monsters get closer, you manage to get a better look at the meg. Its jaws can open for almost 10 feet and are littered with 5 rows of sharp serrated teeth. They're built in such a way so that they don't crack even after hitting bone. The meg is an ambush hunter, continues your guide. It probably wanted to take the mosasaur by surprise by attacking it from below, but this attempt failed. Now the predators are moving in circles, likely sizing each other up. They look rather angry and hungry. The mosasaurs trying to get closer to the shark's tail or fins. The creature understands there's no way it could bite through the meg's bulky sides. The shark chooses another tactic. It's aiming for the mosasaur's long midsection. The critters start circling faster, getting closer to each other. The mosasaur keeps changing its pace from slow, almost lazy movements to nervous bursts of speed once it sees the meg approaching. The shark is swimming in a steady way, watching the opponent with its piercing black eyes. You can't help but think it's pretty obvious which animal's going to be the winner. The mosasaur's jaws are suited for small prey, like fish. Its jaws wouldn't be able to open wide enough to get around the meg. Because even though both creatures are of the same length, the meg's body is much more massive. Its jaws are also more powerful, designed to deal with whales and other large marine animals. Plus, the mosasaur's body isn't efficient for high-speed swimming. It gives the shark another advantage. In a flash, the meg twists its body and rushes at the mosasaur. Its maneuver is not to let the enemy get an upper hand by striking from below. The 2 powerful creatures clash each other. You see the mosasaur try to maneuver out of the meg's way, but to no avail. You're clenching your fists, silently sending your support to the mosasaur, and then a sudden jerk, and you find yourself on the floor. Go, go, go! Your guide shouting at the skipper. It turns out the animals got so engrossed in their confrontation that they didn't notice the vessel and crashed into its side. Now it's crucial to get as far away from them as possible. If these huge creatures decide the ship is their common enemy, they may cooperate to attack it. Luckily for you, the beasts don't realize the thing they collided with is actually a container with food. The boat is getting further and further away, and you can only guess the outcome of the battle. Too soon for your liking, you reach the shore. The guide, who still looks thoroughly stunned, drives you back to the portal. You, similarly awed, thank him and step through the shimmering veil. You're clutching at a mosasaur tooth in your hand. It's the skipper's gift to you, the only reminder about the incredible world where mosasaurs are still roaming the oceans. That's right, come on aboard. Please enter the submarine slowly and make yourself comfortable. Today, we're going deep into the dark parts of the ocean for the ultimate showdown, Shonisaurus and Megalodon. Time to see how Shoni and Meg stack up against each other. First round, age. Look at Shoni, the largest marine reptile, coming out of nowhere. This marine reptile looks a bit tired since it traveled all night and got here all the way from the late Triassic period, about 215 million years ago. Back then, it was all dinosaurs, plus some crocodiles. Oh look, Meg got here on time too. She looks a bit more fresh and relaxed, probably because she's way younger than her contender. She started her dominance over the ocean 20 million years ago. Will she be able to stay on the throne after this duel? Meg went extinct about 2.5 million years ago, or at least we think she did. Only about 5% of the ocean has been explored, so spreading stories about an underwater giant shark is pretty easy. Who knows what's really hiding down there? Even though they're both extinct, dinosaurs like Shoni are way older. Meg's a baby compared to her. Sorry, Meg, 1 point goes to your older challenger. I bet Shoni's got some awesome stories to tell. Next round, length. Ah, good old Meg. She's the largest shark that ever lived on our planet, around 60 feet long. There aren't any full fossils of her to get a really accurate measurement. Scientists that study modern sharks can guess her length by her epic tooth size. Shoni was a little bit shorter, around 50 feet. She kind of looks like a bigger, bonier version of a dolphin. Dolphins can grow up to 13 feet long. Even the biggest dolphin, the orca, looks tiny. It's only 30 feet long. 1 point goes to Meg for being huge. And we're tied up at 1 apiece. Round 3, teeth. Meg was one of the greatest threats in the ocean with teeth similar to those of a modern white shark. Scary, symmetrical, triangular, insanely sharp, and up to 7 inches long. Meg had around 276 teeth in 5 rows. That sounds super scary, but some modern sharks have over 300 teeth. But they're not all ready for action. Some are fully grown, some are still growing up. Sharks' teeth are not that strong, so they fall out a lot, which is not that big a deal like it is for humans. They produce new teeth all the time, so they can replace the ones that get worn down. Get this, Meg probably worked her way through about 40,000 teeth over her lifetime. Shoni, unfortunately, won't be able to defend herself with teeth in this duel, because she doesn't have any. Researchers believe that younger Shonis had teeth because they needed some help getting food and fending off rivals. When they got bigger and older, they didn't need them anymore. Sorry, Shoni, this round isn't even close. Meg takes the lead 2-1. Next round, who can eat more? Scientists believe Meg ate around 2,500 pounds of food every day. Her teeth tell us she didn't exactly love the salad bar. With a mouth almost 10 feet wide, Meg had the most powerful bite of all animals on our planet. That way, she didn't have to be too picky. She could munch on bigger ocean animals like whales, giant turtles, seals, or any other marine mammal that got, too close. No wonder she weighed about 140,000 pounds. Because of her lack of teeth, Shoni preferred animals with softer bodies, like smaller fish, squids, that sort of stuff. We don't really know how much she ate every day, but with an approximate weight of around 60,000 pounds, she's heavier than 2 sperm whales or 3 elephants, but still peanuts compared to the mighty Meg. Good for you, Shoni. Keep up the good work with all that soft food. But unfortunately, Meg's eating up the points in this competition, 3-1. You don't really want to mess with someone who can eat a whole whale for breakfast. Round 5, looks. Scientists have reconstructed Meg to look like a bigger, just a little more dangerous version of a white shark. They were so similar that lots of people thought the white shark was Meg's great-great-great-grandkid. But the truth is that they're not related at all. Meg was the last member of a completely different lineage of sharks. She had a shorter nose and a flatter jaw that almost looked like it got squished somehow. Like the blue shark, she had really long pectoral fins to support her size and weight. Shoni looks like a tubby, bit quirky, and way bigger version of a dolphin. She has 4 flippers and a longer skull. And what's interesting is that she doesn't have a dorsal or sail fin. Shoni can't do any of those cool tricks and maneuvers that dolphins do. That part also probably doesn't help when she meets another hungry dinosaur. She can't dodge out of the way so easily. Still, Shoni's big enough not to have to worry about that kind of stuff. Step aside, Meg. Stop hogging the spotlight. We want to see more of this cute, funny dolphin-like creature. 1 point for Shoni. She's catching up 3-2. Round 6. Who has a cooler name? Shonisaurus means lizard from the Shoshone Mountains. Why? Because it's a lizard from the you get the picture. Cool name, huh? Megalodon, on the other hand, means large tooth. Sorry, Meg, it's 1 point for Griffith. Wait a minute, wrong video. We're all tied up at 3-3. Round 7. Who traveled more? Just like modern sharks, Meg's skeleton isn't made of bone, it's made out of cartilage. That's the stuff your ear and nose are made out of. So, no matter how much you look for them, you're never going to find any of Meg's bones. Her only fossils are actually teeth, since they're made of dentin. In her 18 million years of existence, Meg traveled a lot. Her teeth have been found all over the globe. She even went on vacation to tropical and subtropical waters. But the one place she never went was to Antarctica. Shoni was a wanderer too. Her fossils were first found near Las Vegas. No, it's not what you think. She really wasn't all about the parties and shows. Vegas was all underwater back then. She too took long trips along the coast, visited different countries, enjoyed fancy seafood buffets all over the world. Pretty good life overall. Let's give Meg this one for making it to almost every continent. She leads 4-3. Round 8. Who was more popular? Seeing Shoni swim by could easily scare away other sea creatures. She's pretty big after all. But pretty soon, they'd see that this reptile wasn't that dangerous. Okay, squid, small fish, they weren't big fans. But medium-sized water creatures soon figured out they were too big for her, so they could be friends. Except for, the Kraken, a colossal squid and legendary sea monster with extremely powerful tentacles. The story goes that the Kraken had something to do with the disappearance of some members of Shoni's family. So let's just say they're not exactly BFFs. Meg, introvert, loner. She comes to the party and stays in the corner, not talking to anyone. And there weren't exactly a lot of animals lining up to ask her to dance. It'd probably be their last. When you're that high up in the food chain, you're never going to be too popular. Shoni makes a comeback with the popularity round, and it's all tied up at 4. Well, that means both of our contestants are going to share the... Wait, Meg looks furious. You can see her gritting her teeth, getting ready to finish this contest once and for all. Shoni smiles peacefully. She's not used to big animals going after her, so she doesn't think Meg would actually do anything crazy, as long as the submarine doesn't get too close. Okay, wait, Shoni's swimming towards Meg. They're gonna go at it. No, Shoni's telling Meg she can have the prize. Wow, crisis averted. Meg does not like to lose. Shoni, you certainly deserve the Pacifist of the Pacific trophy. Uh-oh. Meg doesn't look too happy about that. Better strap in, guys. Here we go. In the left corner, Megalodon, considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the aquatic world. It has a reputation as a cold-blooded hunter who can break a fishing boat with one bite. We're gonna need a bigger boat. But what if he comes face-to-face with another giant water monster? In the right corner, Mosasaurus, an ancient dinosaur reptile which existed about 80 million years ago on the vast Atlantic Ocean. Their diet was large fish, giant turtles, other mosasauruses, and even birds. So glad I'm not on the menu, ha ha! But to find out if this reptile can defeat the most massive shark that ever existed, we'll compare these monsters in several categories. Let's start with size. Megalodon became extinct 3 million years ago, but is still considered the largest and most dangerous predator in the ocean. We can only guess at the real size of Megalodon. The only remains found of this giant shark are teeth and vertebrae. Kinda sounds like my grandma. She used to leave her teeth everywhere. But with the help of calculations and computer modeling, scientists have concluded that Megalodon's length could be about 50 feet. It's like a New York City subway car, except it won't try to eat you. Now let's have a look at the right corner. The size of the Mosasaurus also remains a subject of discussion, but it's believed that the average length of this monster was about 36 feet. That's the size of a school bus. But in 2016, scientists found the largest Mosasaurus ever. Its length was 59 feet. Compare this to the tallest person ever, 8 feet. Mosasaurus was 7 times larger. Hey, nice job on the quick math. The first win goes to the Mosasaurus. 1-0 in favor of the ancient reptile. The next category is weight. Let's start with the fighter in the left corner. The most enormous individuals of the Megalodon species had an incredible weight from 27 to 59 tons. This is more than the weight of an empty Boeing 737, without the snacks and beverages. Although the Mosasaurus is longer, its weight isn't that much because of its body shape. Adult species could reach 14 tons, which is half the weight of a megalodon. For comparison, an adult blue whale can weigh up to 100 tons or even more. But whales are not the peak predators like Megalodon and Mosasaurus. In this category, Megalodon wins and gets its first point. It's now 1-1. Let's move on to the next category, speed and agility. Megalodon wasn't the fastest fish on Earth. He could reach a speed of about 11 miles per hour. For example, the quickest sea creature is the sailfish. It can swim 68 miles per hour. But this didn't prevent Megalodon from becoming the top predator in the aquatic world. The average person only swims at a speed of 2 miles per hour. But the Achilles heel of Megalodon is agility and maneuverability. In fact, Meg is a 50-ton truck, so he can't turn and change direction quickly. If he's going to attack, he has only one chance to hit, because if he has to go for a second lap, his prey will have the opportunity to scoot. The exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim is unknown, but scientists think he borrowed his swimming style from the eel. He would push off with his tail and steer with small side fins. This provided him with incredible maneuverability. In theory, this could help him jump out of the water, just like a scene from Jurassic World. But to know the exact speed with which Mosasaurus could swim, we need to find more remains of this ancient reptile. Right now, the point in the speed and maneuverability category goes to Megalodon. 2-1 in favor of the biggest shark of all time. Our next category is fighting instruments. First, we'll look at Megalodon's arsenal, his giant teeth. They were extremely sharp because of their triangular shape, and they reach 7 inches long. Megalodon's teeth are considered to be the largest that ever existed, and it had 250 of them. They were placed in 5 rows and could easily penetrate the thick skin of whales and other ancient creatures. In addition, the jaw itself was incredible. It was 6.5 feet wide. The average person could easily fit in there standing at full height. Boy, wouldn't that fall into the stupid selfie category. The muscle strength combined with the giant maw gave Megalodon one of the strongest bites on our planet. The primary tool of the Mosasaurus is the jaw. Its jaw held 40 to 50 sharp and massive teeth. They were conical in shape to penetrate even the thickest skin, like a knife through butter. And the jaw itself was similar to a snake's. So Mosasaurus was able to swallow colossal prey without even chewing. In some of the discovered remains of Mosasaurus, perfectly preserved remains of fish were found, and they were 3 feet long. The Mosasaurus head was a little over 2 feet long, and although this jaw wouldn't be enough to swallow Megalodon as a whole, It could bite off a pretty big piece of him, or even just rip off its tail. For this ultimate combat tool, the Mosasaurus gets the point. The score is tied 2-2. The last category is combat skills. Although Megalodon has a giant mass and sharp teeth, he reached the top of the food chain for another reason – intelligence. Scientists found many remains of whales with scars from Megalodon's teeth. These findings have helped to understand the hunting tactics of this giant shark. It turned out that Meg could find weaknesses in other marine creatures and knew where their vital organs were located. Other remains had many fractures. Apparently, the victim had experienced Megalodon's 50-ton ram. It could easily have broken through concrete walls. The whales didn't stand a chance. With the help of strategy and tactics, Megalodon could have handled prey much bigger than himself. He could attack the whale's tail and fins until he was completely immobilized. And then, when the victim was defenseless, well, like they say, dinner is served. Unlike sharks that love to ambush, Mosasauruses were quite aggressive. Scientists found many remains of the Mosasauruses with traces of teeth marks from their own species. Whether they fought for food or territory is unknown, but we know for sure that their fights were brutal. The remains had many fractures, but they didn't ram their victims. No! They grabbed its head and actively bit and struggled, breaking its bones. Such a technique is used by modern crocodiles. Also, the Mosasauruses had excellent vision, which gave them a chance to see the victim from afar and attack unexpectedly. Before we move on to the fight, a bonus round! Audience Sympathy Prize. Megalodon has appeared in many different movies, TV series, and comics, and each of its appearances has inspired fear in the audience. He really has a reputation as an ideal predator, and I would bet my money on him. Mosasaurus, on the other hand, doesn't have many appearances in popular culture, but the scene where he eats a great white shark in one bite surprised spectators around the world. So this dinosaur has the potential to become a star. This, of course, doesn't affect the outcome of the fight. Oh, there's the gong. Now we'll find out who will win this fight. Opponents meet in the waters off the coast of North America. Mosasaurus noticed Megalodon from far away and attacked first. However, his teeth are not big enough, and he barely hurts the Meg. Now, the giant shark is attacking the reptile. Mosasaurus is very agile, and he easily dodges the slow blows of the Megalodon. They break apart. It's time to change tactics, and Megalodon decides to go for a trick. Mosasaurus is a reptile, though a huge one. This means it breathes air and swims underwater only by holding its breath. Meg begins to descend deeper, luring Mosasaurus into a trap. In deep water, the ancient reptile feels uncomfortable and begins to make mistakes. Megalodon attacks fins and tail, depriving the enemy of mobility. Once the Mosasaurus loses its tail, the battle ends. Oops. Megalodon has again proved that he is the king of the seas, and he deservedly stands at the top of the food chain. The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're just impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailor stories, the Kraken reached 5,000 feet in length. That's almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legend said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah, in all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need lots of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. Many people are starving because of the reduction of large fish in the ocean. Urban economies that rely on fishing will be in decline. Prices for small fish around the world are getting more expensive because it's unsafe to fish. To defeat the Kraken, you need powerful weapons, but the monster is tough to catch. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. So, what can you do? You can't track the Kraken because it approaches from the depths, not the surface. Though you may be able to tell that the monster is somewhere nearby if a lot of fish surface. When the Kraken swims, it scares all the fish in the vicinity. But it might already be too late. A huge tentacle emerges from the water, resembling a high tower. This tower falls on the deck of the ship, shattering it. The sailors scream and run. The Kraken lands a second blow, and the vessel is almost capsized. Next, the Kraken wraps its giant tentacles around the ship and pulls it to the bottom. Oh boy! What if the sailors managed to detach the ship from the tentacles of this monster? With the help of powerful weapons, the ship's crew strikes back. The Kraken retreats under the water. It's hurt, angry. It seems the battle is over, but here comes the worst. A whirlpool forms beside the ship. Thanks to its considerable weight, when the Kraken dives, it creates a whirlpool behind it. Like a drain in a giant bathtub, this whirlpool sucks the ship down. The battle with the Kraken is lost. Well, that was unfortunate. You might be able to defeat the monster if you can anticipate its attack in advance. But the Kraken can see you and your ship before you can see it. Colossal squids live in deep waters, and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. Around the world, cargo transportation by ship is declining. Airlines provide the only safe connection between the continents. This will increase air pollution. The most successful enemy of the Kraken is submarines. They travel at great depths and are equipped with powerful echolocators to help detect the Kraken in advance. Subs are well armed too, and the round metal body is not so easy to destroy. A single Kraken may be defeated by a submarine, but what if there are several sea monsters? 3 Kraken can wrap their tentacles around the submarine and drag it deeper into the water where the pressure will destroy their enemy. In other words, they'll have a crush on you. The existence of the Kraken will have dramatically changed the development of many countries. What if Christopher Columbus, on his famous journey, noticed an island that he thought was the New World? He approaches it, but tentacles emerge from the island and sink Columbus's ship. The colonization of North America is delayed, maybe until airplanes are invented, and the first crewed flight wasn't until the 20th century. There would be no Hollywood. There would be no hamburgers, no famous American music playing. There wouldn't be YouTube, which means you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Worst of all, the internet wouldn't exist either. And all this because of one stupid monster squid. The Vikings wouldn't sail on their long ships to raid and settle foreign territories. The history of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and other Nordic countries would have changed drastically. Hey, maybe the Titanic wouldn't have hit an iceberg, but a giant sea monster instead. Though, it's unlikely that people would take trips on huge ocean liners in a world where the Kraken exists. Maybe though, the Kraken isn't all that aggressive. Still, they need a lot of food, and because of the growing population of these monsters, there will be much less food in the ocean. Therefore, the Kraken will increasingly come to the surface for hunting. In the future, the Kraken will migrate closer to the shore. In many countries, people then are not allowed to swim in the ocean. Imagine floating on the waves and a monster the size of a skyscraper is swimming right below you. Relaxing at sea and on the beach will no longer be popular. Many countries that live off tourism become impoverished. When the Krakens grow hungrier, they try to capture prey from land. A huge squid could attack small port cities. Houses, docks, streets, everything can be crushed. A tremendous amount of plastic is thrown into the ocean near the coasts of large countries. Billions of tons of plastic will bother the Kraken. An angry, hungry monster can attack bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge. Imagine that a huge squid surrounds the bridge and blocks all traffic. Some of these squids could break the strong cables with their power, and the entire structure would collapse into the water. Ooh! It's good that the Kraken doesn't really exist to swim in our seas and oceans, at least as far as we know. But could the monster have actually existed? Legends stretch back years, but scientific evidence appeared in the middle of the 19th century. In 1857, a 3-inch diameter squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid has been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years, and we still don't know what max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bath escapes and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. The legend of the Kraken probably appeared because of a real colossal squid. People in the past didn't know about these creatures' existence, so when they saw one for the first time, they described it as a massive, terrible monster. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, because the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim. Like my